The gi spot. I'd hit that.
No, I'm going to say that in a second. 3.
Is the number one?
Yeah.
Number one.
I don't know. Are you going to say 1?
Yeah, got it.
We got it. Woohoo!
So
Make
good.
sure this gets in.
Oh, okay. 3, 2,
1.
1.
Nope.
Welcome to the Gi Spot podcast. My name's Rachel Bradshaw and I have a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu.
And it had nothing to do with me.
It was everything to do with you. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Kaz Page and I have a purple belt in Jiu-Jitsu and welcome.
Welcome.
Yay, we did not get through that one without a giggle.
Let's bring him straight in.
Yes, let's do it. Well, wait. I got trivia first.
Oh,
Trivia.
okay.
Who's the one person that's been on every episode but has never showcased on an episode?
No, he has.
Not as a solo.
Yes, he has.
When?
His black belt one.
Oh, all right, I'll shut up then. Hi, Matt.
Hi,
What's up, ladies?
Did you forget about that?
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't sure if
it wasn't
we-
about her, so she wasn't interested.
She wasn't the star.
I wasn't sure. Did we do just you for
Yep.
your black belt, or did we have Grant
was
and
just
you for your black
Both.
belt?
We did both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we did just me, and then we did one where you interviewed me, Grant, and Rach.
Right.
Or
Okay.
Rachel, Grant, and I.
Yeah, as the like the.
Oh,
Oh,
the
you're going to
holistic
sit here for
thing.
the next hour and do proper English, aren't you?
Well, I'll probably try and get it constructed semi-decently.
Whatever.
So people don't think I'm the usual troll that I am.
Hey, husband.
Hi, how you doing?
This is what you look like today.
Today.
You furry beast that
Yes,
you are.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I even put on a blue shirt.
You did, and appropriately so, because we've invited you on our episode today, front and centre, to discuss exactly what's on your shirt, mental health.
Yeah.
Yay.
Well, I like that you guys are confident that we'll stick to the target, because I think we'll drift well away.
Honey, I don't think we've stuck to the target in 50 whatever it is episodes. So today's going to be no different whatsoever. I have zero expectations on sticking to target.
Hey, I just love our conversations, but I do know that like we'll start off with a topic, we'll go right around in a big circle. We always manage to bring it back towards the end though.
It's like Billy Connolly. He starts his joke, he goes around the world, and he eventually gets to the punchline. See? And we're in good company then. I don't mind, Billy.
Hey, I was going to say something which messed up that whole intro for me.
It was number
but-
one.
So actually, speaking of number one, and it's
It
surprising
is.
that you bring this
Hell
up,
yeah.
is that today for some reason I was listening to last week's episode, and for some reason when I've hopped back in the car, Spotify has jumped me back to episode 1 of the Gi Spot.
Oh, wow.
And it was so interesting to listen to
The
that
difference.
first 5 minutes and go,
Oh, wow.
"Ooh, that was a bit wooden and awkward." And even though we were so impressed with how it was, like it's just we've developed. So I feel like we have developed so much,
Yeah.
and become so much more comfortable in this space, and knowing that we have an audience that are listening and are with us every week
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff. And
Now we just have a chat and hang.
yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the first episode in that first 5 minutes, it was like very professional. There was no mucking up at the start.
See, I can do it. I can be good girl.
Yeah, for one episode.
Yeah. Well,
The first one,
for the
then we
first 5
slide.
minutes.
But it's been quite a journey, and we
been
worked
awesome.
out the other day. We're actually coming up to 1 year soon.
We are. We're going to have a birthday celebration very soon and get
Yeah.
everybody involved if we can somehow. That'll be awesome.
And, producer Matt has been with us since day one, every step of the way. So it's really cool that we get you back on this episode and
Yeah.
get to know you, the man behind the curtain.
microphone.
The curtain.
The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
The
The
tech
Wizard of
monkey.
Oz.
And have a bit of a chat. So,
Nice.
all right.
Love it.
So the reason I wanted to get you on board today and had a chat with Rach, and she was all in, something that's very akin to you and I is the mental health process and the mental health journey.
Yep.
And not just because of your accident and dealings before then. We'd gone through some pretty heavy mental health related journeys prior to the accident anyway. So this has kind of been in our world for a really long time, between depression and anxiety and those kind of things. But I say often and in a lot of episodes that I believe Jiu-Jitsu saved us
Yep.
and to a large degree was a very critical path in your recovery and your rehab. And I just thought it might be nice to hear it more from you than me just kind of sitting there singing the bandwagon. Rach suggested just before we came on air that it would be good if you could take us back, though, to just prior, I guess, to the accident and then, you know, the onset from there and really coming to how you found jiu-jitsu.
Mainly because I know you guys have written a book called My Broken Soldier, and you talk about it in there. And then you have a podcast together, Love Conquers, which is your answer to what happens next. And you have talked about the accident in that as well. For our listeners who get to hear about you, or you get to dip in every, you know, episode, and we talk about you almost every episode. We're like, hey, what do you think about that, producer Matt? But for our listeners who may not have read the book or may not listen to your other podcast, would you be happy to share like what actually happened?
Yeah, of course.
Many many years ago.
Of course. Yeah, no dramas at all. So long time ago, in a not so galaxy far away, before I had a black belt in jiu-jitsu, I used to be a member of the Australian Army. And, you know, done a bunch of stuff, had a very, very, I guess, fulfilling career, got a lot of opportunities and things like that, deployed, did the job to as much as I could. And on this particular time in question, we were working down in Puckapunyal, which is in Victoria, on it's a large range. It's a range that handles armoured vehicles, artillery, a bunch of different uses, even drones. They'll do drone practice down there as well, and some other various other aspects of driving and things like that. So it's a fairly big, and it's just kind of grasslandy area. There's a few patches there where there's scrub, and there's a few patches there where there's some like giant hills or small mountains, whatever you call them. But by and large, we're talking about, you know, big open training areas, and which is ideal for the job that we used to do, which I was a cavalryman, so it was all armoured vehicle work. On this particular time, we were scheduled to be down at the range there to be essentially running a training course for officers. So part and parcel is that when you have to train people to do a certain role, you have to have fill-ins to adopt the other roles. So if you're training new soldiers, you've got to have somebody in there to be their section leader, things like that, so that they can bring them along and make sure everything's going right. When you're training officers, well, their big primary role is command. And so if you have an officer and you're trying to train him in a practical sense without anybody to command, then there's no real merit in that. So we were down there doing that, and I think we had nearly a full section of cars. So it would have been 6 or 7 cars that we would have had, plus a notional vehicle that was for the directional staff as well in the packet. So
sorry, just to elaborate, define cars.
The armoured vehicles. So in this particular case, it was a Bushmaster, protected mobility vehicle, which essentially looks like, if you think about the American short buses, so big, boxy, yellow, only these aren't yellow.
Any army clippings that we've seen on the news of late about any of the soldiers over in Afghanistan, they're in the Bushmasters when you see them going through.
Yeah, generally, if it's big, square and boxy, then it's a Bushmaster,
Okay.
Yeah, if it's a little bit sleek and looks like a float, then it's probably an ASLAV. They're both are options.
And what are the ones with the big gun out the top, and what are they called?
Depends how big a gun.
I don't know, like a really big arm that goes out the front, and then you've got the person comes up and goes.
Oh yeah, so that you'd be looking at probably an ASLAV for that.
Okay.
So they've got a 25mm chain gun on top, and they've got a coaxial 7.62, which is essentially a general purpose machine gun as well. In that mix, if you go up from there, you're looking at, small tanks. We only have one tank in the Australian arsenal, which is the Abrams. So we've got the ASLAV, which has a bigger sort of, it's a fairly heavy looking weapon, but it shoots, essentially a large bullet about 25mm across.
Right.
And then, if you go down from there with the Bushmasters, we only had a 7.62 general purpose machine gun up top. But we mounted that on a robotic weapon station, which would then increase its capacity significantly. Like it's like playing video games, and the capacity to shoot with that thing is like, if I was shooting, let's say 1.5 k's away, you'd be like laser beams. It'd be hitting within centimeters of the other rounds every round, on target, on time, and then I can functions there where I can flick a button, and it would stay on that exact spot no matter where my vehicle was traveling. at the
That's
time.
amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's
Yeah,
really
wow.
cool.
It's like
Really
big toys.
Yeah.
It is really cool.
Yeah, it's so rad.
Yeah, and look,
Yeah.
look at the grin on his face.
Yeah,
It's like,
absolutely. Like,
this shit excites
you know,
me.
we're gonna take, you know, guys that are under 30 and we're gonna give them billions of dollars worth of equipment and we're just gonna see how it goes. Like it's
And hope for the
and
best.
see what they do with it. Like, which is invariably we just fuck around with it. But yeah, on this particular case, we were down there training officers. So there was 2 officers to be trained at the time. We had 1 directional staff with us from my squadron, and then myself, who was acting as the troop sergeant in this role. So essentially, I'd be the guy that was liaising with the officer who was getting trained at the time, and we'd run the section of cars together.
So paint the picture. Was it daytime, nighttime? Was
Yep.
the sun out? Was it a wet day? Like, what was going on?
Yeah, cool. So it's Puckapunyal in Victoria, so the weather can be a bit hit and miss. But from memory, we'd had rain during patches of the time we were out, and then some patches of dry. So this night, I think in particular, it was a nighttime move we were doing, and it was particularly dry and clear. So there wasn't a lot of, it wasn't particularly dark, you know, which is perfect because when we're moving at nighttime, we're not moving in a conventional sense. So there's no headlights or anything when you're going cross country at night. You're driving under what we call blackouts. So if you think about, like, you've got a, I'm trying to think of something similar, but essentially it's a matchbox size little panel that's on the back of your vehicle, both sides. And inside that, there's 2 or 3 little strips of light, and one's white, one's red. So red's being brake, white's just being your trail lights.
Yep.
And that's how we follow each other. So we've got to do that, and we're just looking for the light. Now we're driving around under night vision equipment, so it's quite easy to see when you're under those conditions. In fact, you don't really need the blackout lights. It's just a thing that we do to make sure that everybody can see anybody. And so we kicked off. And we kicked off on this particular move. We were conducting that evening. We had to conduct an ambush so set an ambush, you know, make sure it's all done, either execute the ambush, or if we're not lucky enough, then we'd withdraw from that position, go to our night hide location, and move on from there. So we're moving on to the target area, or the ambush site, and moving across country, and the driver's sort of drifting a little. My driver's drifting a little bit, but it's not too bad. It's probably only just coming into twilight sort of thing. So he's probably got a bit of visibility, and it's not terribly difficult. And we're all moving as a packet in formation. So instead of just like driving in a straight line over and on a road or over country, you strategically or tactically move in a way that's going to give you enough support to be able to carry out your role. So if one car gets hit, there's already another car that's capable of delivering assistance straight away in order to be able to regain the initiative. So on this particular case, we were moving 2 up, which means 2 cars in the front and then trailing cars behind in a column essentially. So I'd be on the right hand side because I was troop sergeant. I had troop corporal on the left, and he was supposed to be doing the nav, which he decided that he didn't think he was supposed to be doing the nav. So I found out he didn't do the nav, and I just started picking up from there. Sorry, it's a bit of a decide, but we moved in, and it was a bit higgledy-piggledy and a bit sort of clunky, as from my perspective anyway. Like I was like, my driver's not really getting this, but that's okay. I've known my driver for a lot of years. Is John. John was kind of like a mascot for the unit almost. He'd been around forever. He probably had nearly 20 years in the army, but had never made it past the rank of trooper, which is in Cav world, it's our first rank. So you go through recruit, you come out as a trooper. John had deployed to the first time we went over to Timor. He deployed there, and you know, that was some rough times there. There was a lot of guys who spent a lot of time, you know, pulling bodies out of wells and stuff like that. So there's a lot of just really hard stuff to deal with, and not a lot of the pointy end action that we sort of go, oh, we can deal with that, but we can't deal with this monotonous, constantly dragging dead bodies out of wells. So John didn't do well over there. His soldier skills were never particularly of the sharpest end, but he was willing, and he was enthusiastic, and he was committed. That's a good start. Flash forward, some other stuff happened over in Timor that got him into a bit of trouble, and he sort of never really came back from there right. When we were on this move, John was sort of roughly doing what I was saying, but not quite. And I was like, oh, all right, John's a bit tired, he's a bit slow. Whatever's going on, I'll sort him out afterwards. I'll just get into my position. So in conjunction with the boss, we get the cars put into the correct positions where they've got to be in order to be able to execute this ambush if we needed to. And then we started to wait. That's all fine. No worries. I think 2 or 3 hours goes past and there was nothing. There was no need to execute on the ambush. So we just simply did what we normally do, which would be like a tactical withdrawal from the position. So there's a sequence of events of how things have to go. So the boss would go first, I believe. No, sorry, probably the troop corporal would go first, and then the boss would follow him out, and then the other cars, and I'd be the last man. The reason being that the last man is the troop sergeant is because in the relationship of running a platoon or a troop of cars, you kind of have like a mum and dad role. So you've got, the boss who is going to tell you all the shit you don't want to hear. It's going to be rough. He's going to insist that you do the things, and you'll be like, does this guy even give a fuck, or is he building a career based off us? Then you got the troop sergeant, and he's the NCO. He's a soldier's soldier. He's responsible for food, water, ammo. Whether you got a boo boo or owie on your boo boo or whatever those things, making sure everything's good there. And so that was my role. That's the reason why I was coming out last.
Right.
Because that way for certain, or the boss know for certain, that there is no more cars hanging out there doing not what they're supposed to be doing. We have all the tactical scenario locked down. We proceed to move cross country again overnight, but on an exfil, a lot of times you'll conduct it as what we call an admin move. So you wouldn't necessarily move in a strategic sense, because in an administrative move, you generally classify or clarify that the scenario is free and good to go. Like, we're tactically safe. We can just move. We don't have to take anything else into consideration. We'll get from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible, and then we'll bed down for the night. So on this particular move back out, all the other cars are going, and then I'm sort of talking to John saying, hey, we've got to go, get moving. He starts rolling the car. I'm like, okay, this is a bit weird. He's just pushing through a bunch of shit that I don't even know why he'd be doing it that way, but that's cool, John. You got that. I'm just communicating with everybody, making sure we're all sweet.
And are you inside the car? Are you?
Yeah, so this is a massive point of contention that I had with the whole thing, right? So I've deployed operationally. I'm qualified in this robotic weapon station that we have out the top of the vehicle. For some reason, somebody, and I know who they were, I just can't really talk about that side of things, but decided that it would be more realistic for us if we were all standing outside of the turret. Now, if you're in Australia without a weapon station mounted on your vehicle, probably accurate. You can probably do that. In this particular case, they had us all moving outside of the hatch with a great big robotic weapon station sitting in front of us. So it didn't even really give us a better tactical scenario. It was just kind of for the sake of doing stuff. It was real unusual, and I listed some complaints about that prior to it, and it wasn't received well. So we just rolled with what we had to do and went with there. So I'm standing up behind a great big chunk of metal, which I'm qualified to use, so I should be down the front of the vehicle inside with my driver. And Johnny's not really keeping online with the guys. He's not really staying where he should be. Like, a lot of times there, if I'm handling things administratively, Johnny would be, making sure that he's staying where the car's supposed to be. That's his one job. If I can do nothing else, I should be maintaining this job so the boss doesn't have to. Now, John's sort of all over the shop. He's orientating left and right in different ways. He's just sort of as if he was just meandering across country. And I'm watching these two little lights that I can see further up up onto the next crest. And I'm watching them go, and the first one goes over. Oh, sorry, the first one I could see went over. Then the second one went over, and I'm like, we just lost our whole packet.
Right. So you're that far behind from anyone else now at this point.
Yeah, spot on. So I give John the hurry up. I'm like, John, you got to get moving here. Like, we've got to catch up with our boys, because we're going to be separated, and then we've got to call through and make it a thing. Yeah. And he's like, okay, yep, no worries. So foot down, and he starts pushing the speed and things like that. Generally at night time, you could probably move across country 20 plus Ks, but we're probably sitting in the range of about 40 to 60. And we're going there, and I'm like...
And you're not on a road?
No, just grasslands.
Just grasslands.
Yeah, just grasslands, rolling grasslands. So then I'm talking to John, and I'm like, mate, I need you to get back online with these guys. Head left, quarter turn left for me, so we can get back on. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah, no worries. I'm like, John, you got any issues there at all with any of this? Like, are you struggling to see them or whatever? He goes, no, we're all good. Okay, cool, no worries. And then we're cruising along, and I'm like, okay, we're making some speed. Over this next ridge, we'll be able to see our guys and we'll marry back up. And if not, I'll just give them a call on the radio to get them to just have a quick prop there for a minute, and then we'll just catch up and then move the packet on. As we crest over the hill and we're sort of coming down into the lower ground there, one thing that most people wouldn't know about Pakipunal Range, or even, generally traversing cross country and grasslands, is that a lot of times there's a lot of little creek beds and re-entrants through there that you don't see because of the level of the grass. So once the grass is waving, it just kind of all looks like it's even. And we came to a real sudden stop.
Hey guys, sorry for the interruption here. We just wanted to shout out to all our Central Coast and New South Wales listeners. One of our great mates has started a new business, Central Coast Supplements.
Damien's a great guy who also happens to be a veteran. And as you guys know, My Broken Productions and Iconic are huge supporters of our veterans and first responders. So we'd love to see you guys get behind this awesome new business.
If you're looking for protein supplements, healthy snacks for the kids, or just all-round better health options for the family, check out Damien's website, centralcoastsupplements.com.au.
And guys, make sure you remember to use the discount code GISPOT. That's GI space SPOT. GISPOT at the checkout. Now, where were we, Rach?
So John had put the vehicle into one of these dry creek beds, and we would have been moving, between 40 and 60 k's an hour. And I pretty much just got picked up and slammed into the robotic weapon station. So it smashed up my helmet, smashed me up a bit. The next moment that I recall in this instance is I couldn't tell you, even today, like I've got no fucking clue as to whether I, was hardcore blacked out. I mean, I've been put to sleep a bunch of times at jiu-jitsu. It didn't feel like that, which is probably not surprising because, one's just a slight wink out and the other one's probably a traumatic response. So, the next thing I notice is that I'm sort of hung up in the hatch, in and around the weapon station. I'm sort of cocked. I've got a crimped neck sort of hanging in there with my head up against... Sorry, I'm moving my head while I'm making the descriptions. So got my head sort of pressed up against it, banging around on the robotic weapon station, and John's like screaming in my headpiece, like trying to get an idea about what's going on with me, because he's looking for the next prompt as to what he should do. And I'm like, John, I need you to roll back slightly, and then I need you just to punch it, and we're going to hit the bottom, and we're going to sort of bounce off that, and we're going to get out of this. And so John did that. We started rolling. I'm like, John, I need you to fucking drive. I need you to stay on that guy's ass, and I need you not to move, because I'm going to sit my ass down right now for a bit, and I'm just not going to talk for a patch, and I'm just going to get myself right. Squirrel down into the crew commander's seat.
So back inside?
Back inside, yeah, where I was,
Should have been.
Should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we'll find that car one day too.
I have no doubt.
So, and I sort of squirrel back down into there, get myself situated and just sort of chill for a bit, and just giving John slight corrections or slight guidance. I'm like, John, what was going on there? Like, he goes, oh, yeah, I couldn't see through my Ninox. And Ninox is the company that is essentially the brand of night fighting equipment. So you have two tubes, one on each eye, so we can drive, so we get depth perception, and that's our night fighting equipment.
Right.
He said, yeah, I couldn't see through it. I said, did you have bad batteries? He goes, no, I could see green. I could just see nothing but green. I'm like, okay, so is it a focus issue? He goes, I don't know. Okay, all right. So I threw in one of my binoculars and said, we just got to figure this out, dude. I'll give you left and right of arcs if you need it, but we've got to figure this out. And he's like, okay, yeah, no worries, Pagey. So we get there anyway. Long story short is that we continue this move. Probably takes us 20 minutes, half an hour to get back to the night hide location. So when we enter the night hide, we've got to enter in a certain order. There's a certain sequence of things, how they got to be done. So, everybody's on the same page. We all orientating from a similar sort of position. We're all rolling in there, probably in single file to reduce our overall footprint. And then as you come into the center of the night hide location is going to be, then you would star ray or sun ray out from there. So, the boss would take 12 o'clock position, and that's always deemed 12. And then, the other cars would all go off, and I would take the 6.
Does anyone else know anything's happened at this point?
Nothing.
Right, okay.
Nothing at this point.
So you're still just coming in the back as predicted and expected.
Yep.
Yep.
So I was where I was supposed to be. So nobody really questioned anything at that point. Like that's probably pretty important too. Like had they realised, I think there's probably people there who were there that probably would have said, "Oh shit, what's going on there? We need to check this out right now in this location." But they didn't. So we get in, I turn my car around through the middle and come back, orientate back out the way we've just come. So I adopt that position. Another thing that most people won't realise, there's a whole sequencing to how we need to shut the vehicles down, and we do it all simultaneously so there's not a travelling noise or issue there. Conduct all those things. Then you do your normal it's like 30 seconds of administration in the vehicle. The driver switches off, he collects his data from his readings, so then he can pass it on to the troop corporal, who's then going to send it up higher for us so that I can make sure that we've got enough resources to keep going for the next day.
Resources meaning like petrol?
Yep. Yeah. So they call exactly that. Fuel, what's the fuel state? What's the ration state?
Yep.
Do we have any casualties? Do we have manning issues? Do we have any persons under capture we need to offload?
Right.
Any of that sort of stuff.
Yep.
So that was all done, and then we were all called to the boss's car, which is pretty standard too. Like generally after that point, once you've conducted, make sure everything's sweet, I would probably circle the cars and make sure that each car individually didn't need anything that was unusual or different or mechanical issues that needed to be fixed immediately. Once that was all sorted, then you normally go to the boss's car. Boss called us over to the car after we did our shutdown and procedure, and I went to dismount my vehicle. As I went to dismount my vehicle, my legs just didn't catch me. And then I remember trying to right myself and then didn't work, and then trying to right myself again. And essentially I was just bulldozering my head along the dirt as I was doing it. So it's kind of like one of those sort of I'm a sleepy toddler sort of moments where you can see them in cartoons where they're pushing their butt in the air and all they're doing is dragging their face along the earth. That was pretty much me. So at that moment there, people were like, "Oh, what's going on there?" They sort of thought probably that it was just that I'd missed the step, and immediately, and I was like, "Oh no, this is what I understand to have happened." And I was kind of like in that punch drunk mode, I guess, where you kind of flipping about it. You're like, just nah, not interested in hearing it. I've got stuff to do, and you're not 100%, so you're kind of like just doing the best you can, which generally leads to you being pretty short, pretty cranky, pretty agitated in those things. So, knowing what I know now, it's that's one of the things I would look for in a head injury. And so they told the boss and they told the training staff and let them know like what's going on, like what we think. And the training staff calls it and he says, "Righto, I'm not satisfied with this." It's probably the one call he did make that was right. Was we're going to get you Casavac. And so I was belligerent about that point. And then they sat me down with a trooper that was big enough to be able to probably manhandle me, but dumb enough to know that, like, to not listen to my orders if I commanded him to fucking put me the fuck down or stop doing what he's doing because I'm good to go. So poor JJ copped that one. And then they're telling me they're casavacing me. I'm thinking, okay, cool. We're going to get a proper vehicle out here, whether it be a ambulance Bushmaster or it'll be a proper, probably even an ASLAV from the school, thinking that because they're better suited to travelling some of that. No, we get a standard sort of a white fleet vehicle, which is, and they use Land Cruisers in the army. So we got a standard Land Cruiser 4x4, came out to marry up with us, and essentially they decided that they weren't happy with the way that I was responding to when they were taking my observations, or taking my stats.
Is there anything about your physical appearance at this point that's also concerning? Like, are you bleeding? Is your helmet intact? Is your legs going on you again? Like, what's going on physically?
Yeah, so I'm sitting there at the time there, and I'm just kind of like, I get the feeling that I was probably slurring a little bit or just really slow on my responses.
That was documented in the reports.
Yeah, there you go. So as far as bleeding goes, no, it wasn't anything that I was bleeding obviously there.
Your helmet was perforated though.
Yeah. So the helmet got smashed in. There was a big break into it.
Right.
But again, too, nighttime, we're not dealing with white light scenarios, so everything's done in absolute minimal light or red light. So everything doesn't necessarily show up correctly there. But the long and the short of it is they need to get me back out to the area hospital. Now, Puckapunyal is one of those ranges where they actually have a medical hospital, like a hospital of sorts on base, because they train a lot of people. They need a lot of people to be supported there. So they took me back out there in this white fleet over cross country and shit like that. So they brought me in the night. There was no doctors on call at all. So they put me in a bed. They said, all right, we'll get the nursing staff just to keep stats on you, and we'll go from there. So I woke up the next morning and like my pillow, I bled out of my ear and out of my nose. But it wasn't significant. It was just kind of a little bit. And so the nurse was like, oh, okay, well, we're going to organise you some scans. I think it was about mid that next morning that I first saw a doctor. And so he went through and sort of said, oh, righto, and checked my neck out, things like that. So from there, he sort of did minimal checking, but he's like, I really want to get some scans done. So they went and ordered a CT scan. So I went into Seymour, I think it is near Puckapunyal. It's a little town. Got driven into there, got to do the scan, came back out, and then I was just sort of cooling my heels going, well, what now? Like, what are we doing now? So I started to question why I was even here then if we weren't progressing any further. If the scan didn't show up anything, does that mean it's nothing? And they wouldn't necessarily tell me that it was nothing, but they wouldn't tell me that there was definitely stuff. So then I'd assume that there was nothing found on the CT scan, which we understand to be pretty common dealing with head injuries and brain injuries. Is that a CT scan's just not capable enough. It's not nuanced enough to be able to pick up some of those real micro damage that gets done in the brain.
Yep.
And at that point, there was no justifiable reason why I should be in that bed for me, if they weren't going to do any further exploration or do anything further. So I was calling my boss and saying, listen, what's going on here? Like the directional staff going, what's going on here? Why aren't they, if they're not progressing me, can't I just go back to work, or do I need to go back to work? Whatever. They said, all right, we'll take care of it. Next thing I know, I'm getting picked up from the hospital. I didn't even sign myself out or anything like that. I think they just got me discharged. I don't even fucking know how that happened. But I was taken straight back to the control point, where we had like the lines for all the support staff and everything like that. And that's where we were running our comms unit and things like that. So we checked in there. They said, yeah, we'll get you back out there as soon as we can, as soon as we've got some white fleet vehicles to get you back out to the cars, and then you'll marry up with your group of guys and carry on. So that was all fine. Sort of went to the mess, had lunch with the guys who were supporting, so a few warrant officers and things like that. And they were like, fuck, man, you're next. Like, because I was turning my whole body to try and look left and right at the time. And like, oh, you're cooked, eh? And I was like, yeah, what are you going to do? It just hurts. And they weren't doing anything at the hospital. And they're like, you sure you should be out? I'm like, no, I don't know. I'm just here. So that was fine. Went back out field. They took me back out field, put me into the cars again. Had a couple more days of sort of, the next day, after I went back out field. So I went back out near the night time, which meant that there wasn't much going on. We just sort of bedded down for the night. That was cool. No worries at all. Next day, we're moving along, and I've just got this constant drip of just pinkish fluid out of my nose. Like, not really. I'm like, this is rough. And then there'd be, you get clots and stuff like that as well. And you just think, oh, it's probably just a bit of stuff from yesterday, but it's just not stopping. So about lunchtime that day, I sort of call through to the directional staff, because we run a separate net on top of the net we were running specifically for the tactical scenario, and just said, hey boss, there's a few complications with what I suspect happened the other night. Can I just, I've just got to be off the net for a minute, and but we can carry on the tactical scenario, just don't expect me to be up out of my vehicle for right now, because I'm thinking, I want to attend to this nosebleed situation. And so he ended up saying, no, don't worry about it, we're going to swap you out with somebody. So he got somebody out of his vehicle, threw him in mine to finish that off, and I sat in the back of his vehicle until such time as the fluid stopped for a bit.
So just so I understand, so you've got a suspected head trauma and you're in the back of cars getting jumped around and thrown from this way to that.
Yep.
You're not on a road.
Nope.
You're on grassy land that has dips and hills and...
Absolutely.
And helmet's back on again for his brain to be chunked around inside of. And he was, there's a lot, and I know we're limited on time. So, but even the hospital scenario, you know, nobody called me, nobody let me know. Matt let me know. I think you're in hospital for 3 days.
Yeah, I think it was the third day before I called you.
Yeah, and it was, you know, don't panic. So, okay, well, that's a stupid thing to say. Just had an accident. Nobody will tell me what's going on, so I'm going back out bush. It's like, sorry, you.
So it was actually 3 days.
Yeah, it would have been probably 3 days. Yeah.
3 days in hospital.
Yeah.
A lot of waiting around, and what they didn't realise, and what nobody realised at that stage, was the level of pain that he was in. And so that vicious response, that coldness that was coming from him and that shut down, that was all coming from him. That's a pain response, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think now where I was up to. Yeah, so...
Sorry.
No, not at all.
So you were back in the car and you said you were dealing with the nosebleed.
Yeah, dealing with the nosebleed situation and things like that. There was another point. There was something important. No, it's gone. It'll come back to me anyway.
You're in the back of your boss's car, waiting for it to bleed out.
Doesn't matter. It's gone. TBI. Okay. That's how it is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. So we do that. We're sort of moving through the tactical scenario through that day, and you know, pretty much the boss says to me, like, "Can you keep going? Can you carry on or not?" And I was like, "Look, boss, as far as I know, I can. Like, there's no, you know, what's the option here? You're going to get the medics back out here in the White Fleet vehicle, and they're going to have a look at me and go, oh yeah, no, he's fine." He goes, "Look, probably." And he goes, "Well, okay, but if it becomes a problem, I need you to be upfront with it and do your things." So nevertheless, I didn't foresee it as being an issue at the time, but then, you know, seldom would you if you had a compromised brain anyway. You know, we carried on tactical scenarios, live firing ammunition, doing the things that we did on that exercise that I was not, you know, legally probably of sound body and mind. And yet I was doing all that stuff under the correct supervision of somebody who was, and so it's kind of a weird spot there. But I mean, we were live firing weapons, so there's a whole safety issue there. We were, you know, moving of these big vehicles around the base itself, and then we even had an aspect there where we're out, you know, driving on public roads as well, which is kind of super concerning to me. Like that was even a thing, that somebody with a head injury was just out there driving, you know, one of these giant vehicles and with all the capacity to be able to just, you know, kill a family with a vehicle like that. So yeah, that was a thing. But I just remember, like, through the patch there, it was kind of just coming to the end of the training scenario, and I just kind of felt tired and cranky all the time. Like, and so it didn't even really occur to me that there was anything sort of further wrong. Like, I had headaches, but you always kind of have headaches when you're on the job. You know, you're never sleeping right. You're always dehydrated. You're always, you know, all those things. So to have a headache's not a big deal. To have a short fuse is not a big deal. To be tired is not a big deal. None of these things were, you know, blaringly obvious as being something that I was compromised in some way, shape or form. Yeah. So that's essentially the
So that's the accident.
That's the nickel tour.
So what happens after that? So with your mental health and everything that comes from that leads you down this path over the next 20 years. Oh, is it 20 years?
It's close to that anyway. Yeah,
Close
I think it was 2010, so 15.
So at what point do you know that, okay, something's actually gone wrong here? So at what point do you admit or come to terms with this injury actually has done something here?
Yeah, it probably wasn't for, I don't know, it was probably close to a week or maybe 2 weeks before I really even realised that there was something going on. Like, and that was probably the instance with Scarlett where I just didn't recognise who she was.
Well, that Scarlett wasn't born till January, and you had the accident in November.
Yeah.
So it was probably, I would say, a month. Matt doesn't remember a whole lot through the process and the time.
Yeah.
And I would say it was probably a good month of... It took me a couple of weeks to realise that there was some serious problems going on. This wasn't just residual whiplash or, you know, pain from the thing.
He's had a few good night's sleeps. He shouldn't be this cranky
That's
anymore.
He would always come home dirty, cranky, tired from a training exercise, and, you know, give it a day or two for him to subside back into normality. We were now pushing sort of week 2, week 3. And we had a lot going on in the house anyway, but there was just something not right. And you have those moments where you just can't put your thumb on it. Like, I'm sure I just lost you for 30 seconds there, but did I really lose you? Or, and whoa, why did you snap quite so badly about that? Like, I get that you might be frustrated or something. Everything just seemed to be amplified.
Right.
And it wasn't until we started realizing that we were missing him in conversations. And he would be talking, and then all of a sudden there'd just be silence mid-sentence. And he would almost go limp. His eyes would just roll over. There'd just be nothing. And then it'd be like the engine turning off and then the engine turning on again. And
were you aware that you were vaguing out?
No, nothing. None of it.
So in your mind, you were having a conversation and then...
Just picked up where I left off.
It was just keep going.
Yeah, pretty much.
But in that time, there'd be 30 seconds of nothing happening.
Yep.
And you weren't aware of that at all.
Nothing.
Right.
Just dip out.
So at what point did you become aware of that?
Probably didn't become fully aware that sort of stuff was occurring. It probably took me a couple of months to realize that was coming into play.
Were people telling you and you weren't believing it, or?
Yep.
Yeah, like I think that was probably a thing. I mean, I struggle to really remember it all at the moment. But yeah, it's probably a thing where people are going like, you just lose you for a second and go, oh, I must have just drifted off, like it happens. It's one of those things that people do. You don't sort of think too much into it, and it's hard for them to convey what it actually was in those moments, because you're already thinking, oh, no, it's nothing much.
Did you ever get it caught on video or anything like that?
No, it was so... By the time I would have got my camera to try and record him, it's gone.
Right.
And there was no... I kept trying to look for the triggers.
Right.
Were there triggers that were sending him into these moments? And there was times there where I would try and say something to him, and he was already living in so much pain that he wasn't admitting to or owning up to. And so anything that you brought to his attention would be met with... just that immediate aggression. You don't know what you're talking about. And I think to a degree too, there was a fear factor in there, right? This was going to affect his work, and all he ever wanted to be was a soldier. So I think even through that process, there was a hunkering down. If he was going to work every day and anybody would say something, how can I hide this? This whole mechanism of how can I bury it? How can I hide it? Nobody's going to believe me anyway, and I'm not losing my career over this kind of kicks in. But then, January was the critical pass when we'd had Scarlett and he nearly dropped her on a cement floor or threw her onto the cement ground because he was holding her and he just went into this, I don't know, this bizarre episode.
Didn't know what it was at that moment. And I say it because I was like, I knew it was important. I knew it was something to me, but there was just a disconnect in being able to assign, I guess, the nice square box that fit into, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And it just freaked me out.
So you were holding your baby and you're like, I don't know what to...
Yeah, I just like it didn't gel as to what it was.
And then he started to freak.
I was like, take it, just take it.
Yeah. And he was yelling. Like he was yelling at me, take it now. And she was screaming. Yeah. And so I obviously grabbed the baby and then he stormed off, and he would then come out of these moments and come back and like, babe, what's wrong? I'm like, oh, fuck. Yeah. If only you knew. Yeah. And there was a number of those instances. But we, when he started to finally concede that there was something wrong, that meant that he also then had to go and try and get some help through the army. And Matt's accident didn't cause anxiety and depression. Everything that happened post the accident and the failure in the duty of care is what triggered depression in him and what caused anxiety of that nobody believes me, where do I go with this? No support, yeah. And that lack of, and we write about this in the book, that lack of immediate ability to follow in their duty of care is what spiraled him.
All right. So at what point then you go, this is bigger than me. I need to do something here. I need to get some help. I need to change what's happening.
I think probably just after that incident with Scarlett, so we would have still been talking in January because I think the first real proper external consultation that I'd had was at the end of that January. And that was just when, all the army staff had come back from their holidays, all the full-time staff, because at the time I was a reservist. And so the full-time staff had got back on board, and they were actually able to sort of start making appointments and things like that, because you can't just go off and...
It's a really crappy time of year to have an injury or
Yep.
something happen to you, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
It's across the board. So, yeah.
Exactly that. And in those moments too, it was because it was an army issue, I kind of had to follow a certain set of ways of doing things. I could go see a civilian doctor, but I'd probably have to go and repeat the whole process again, which seems ridiculous. But with the doctor who was just going to be a civilian doctor anyway, but was the guy that was booked in by the army. So yeah, would have been the end of that January that, probably the last week or 2 weeks that we'd started the conversation with them that we needed to get checked out. Something needed to happen. Like things still weren't right. There was still a lot of I felt like a lot of pain in my neck, a lot of heaviness in my head, and just pressure, like just loads and loads of pressure. That's probably one of the harder things that was surrounding like head injuries, is weird pressure in your head that doesn't make any sense, or doesn't, I guess it probably makes sense to somebody, but in those moments too, like, if you've got a head injury, you don't really, it's ouchy, it just hurts, sucks, whatever. So yeah, that's when we would have gotten to our first appointment, who they ended up sending me on to a rehab consultant or a rehab specialist. So he's a doctor, but that he specifically worked in the area of rehab. He suspected something like post-concussion syndrome, whatever. The army didn't at the time really acknowledge post-concussion syndrome as a thing. So we're kind of, again, which way are we going? And it took a long time to even get, and the biggest thing we were pushing for was, listen, it's one thing for it to take forever, okay? But during that time, you need to downgrade me medically, because what that would mean for me is that then I would be on a manning list that says that I was injured, and therefore I wouldn't be forgotten. At the same time too, they would support me financially because I was off work. So I had a personal training business that I'd started, was doing quite well, but couldn't be at work because couldn't be at work because I was so messed up. If they downgraded me at that time and place and got it all right, then they would have supported me financially. That didn't happen either. So we went on months and months, and we're still pushing and pushing. Fuck, I don't even know.
It took 6 months.
It took so long to even get any further medical intervention.
And we weren't getting it. That was the problem. What we were getting was really limited. It was getting pushed from pillar to post internally. So Tamworth and Armidale were kind of just shoving the buck between each of them. And every time they would come back to Matt would come home angry, and he'd come home, real downtrodden, almost like, I don't know what it's going to take. Nobody's believing me. I can't get this. And, the accident happened in November. We're now December, then January, then February, then March, and he still wasn't getting any medical support,
and
let
he's
alone
still suffering every day.
Every day in agony.
Yeah.
And nobody would give him help. Nobody would prescribe him anything. He's chewing down Panadol and Nurofen like there's no tomorrow. God knows what that was doing to his kidneys or livers. And we were all suffering. Like, this is the part that people don't realise. It's not just Matt who was going through all this and in agony, but he was then coming home and being that to his family.
And this is a very young family too. You've got a baby.
Yep, got a brand new baby.
You're sleep deprived. You're
Yep.
dealing with that as well.
And we had Willow, who was not quite 2.
Yep.
And we had the 2 teenagers in the house as well through that process. And because everything was going so horrifically wrong and he was losing his business, I was traveling so much internationally for my work, and he was exploding. There was just something about him that was dying on the inside, and we needed to do something to give him somewhere to be, a purpose or whatever, because everything was imploding, I guess, in our world. It wasn't until Pete Goom came into the picture.
Yeah, it did. It required, basically the long and short of it was that the army wasn't willing to downgrade me because they didn't. And this is the funny part too. I actually, since later on down the track, we did a freedom of information request, and because there was documentation that had been misplaced, quote unquote. There was a lot of shit that had been misplaced and just not there, not handled, and I still don't have the answers on why. But when we pulled out some of the freedom of information stuff, you know, the staff at headquarters, which is at Tamworth, were basically coming back and responding to, or the general information that was going back and forth between all the parties that need to communicate was, we got no option. We don't downgrade him because we don't have the budget for downgraded soldiers at the moment in the medical leave sort of area. They didn't have the budget to put me on the books permanently until such time as that I was brought back to med grade 1, where I was fine to go, or permanently discharged. So that was the whole thing there. I think, you know, just along that whole line, they didn't have the funds, so they didn't want to have to allocate funds or find funds. They didn't want to have to go higher and ask higher for additional funds, because then they'd have to do an assessment on the whole situation.
It just got put in the too hard
Exactly
basket.
that. Yeah, it was just too many working parts, too many times where people had to stand up and be morally courageous, and just didn't decide to do that.
So dealing with the injury and your recovery post that, dealing with the institution and how that let you down, that led you, both those things combined, led you to a path of not a great mental health state.
Yeah, no, it's certainly, you know, there's two things there. There's anybody who gets a traumatic brain injury, generally because it works on an inflammation cycle to begin with. So you've got this constant cycle of brain's going to inflame, it's going to cause it to bleed, it's going to push all the resources there to try and get it to drag that blood away and do it again, but that makes more swelling, which causes more inflammation, which then does, and just keeps going down this cycle. During that time, you're not producing your hormones in an effective way. A lot of your serotonin, dopamine, neurotransmitters, anything like that are getting very much, you know, managed in the wrong way. And then on top of that, you add to this stimulus externally from it, and it's just, I mean, it's no brainer at that point. You know, it's gonna affect you somehow.
Plus, on top of that, and I and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it was just the traumatic brain injury that spiraled you into a mental health pathway, though.
No. Sorry, I wasn't downplaying that at all. There was definitely, you know, it was definitely the actions or the lack of action from people that was supposed to be, you know, on my behalf or responsible for, you know, making sure I was all good to go, and just didn't.
Yeah.
You know, and we got sold like that. That's the big thing here. You don't fuck on your mates. Be the guy that's there. Don't be the guy that drops the ball because you want other people to see you're not dropping the ball, so they have the, you know, the courage to be able to not drop the ball themselves.
Yep.
And, you know, in this particular instance there, none of those ideals were upheld.
Look, you guys go into it like what happens post the accident a lot in the book, and I would highly recommend anyone to read it. It is a fabulous read, Kaz and Matt. You both have your you know, I really love how you actually put it together, because you've done it's mostly from your point of view.
Yep.
But at the end of each chapter, Matt's got a part in there that is written to go with it or to support it or to give his point of view. And it's a really cool way that you've done it. Highly recommend it. You can buy it to read it. You can get it on audiobook, and do you both narrate it?
Yeah, we narrate the book as well.
I haven't listened to that, but I have read it, and it's a beautiful read. And if you're interested to see what happens after that, because I'm aware of time as well, I want to fast forward to where you discover or where jiu-jitsu enters your life.
Yeah.
What kind of place were you in just prior to that? Like, were things on the up and up? Were you starting to get everything back together? Were you pretty much 90% good and this has been an extra bit? Or was this the thing that truly just came into your life at the right time because it wasn't going anywhere good otherwise? Like, where were you at?
Yeah, so where I was at, like, at that time and place, so I'd gone back out into the workforce generally. Like, we'd spent a couple of years, probably 4 or 5 years, where we purchased a coffee shop, and
Kaz talks about it often.
Again, it's just, you know, it was daycare for me essentially. Like, while I was sort of, you know, I guess working through it all, which was good to have a place to turn up to. I think strategically it was the right move. Financially, it was a terrible move for us, but strategically and you know, for what circumstances we found ourselves in, it was probably a really good place to have going. In fact, in the fact that it gave me space and time when things weren't right, but in the meantime, you know, it gave me an opportunity to be able to do something that made me feel like I was worth something at that moment, you know, do something practical that was going to, you know, for whatever reason, it's just making coffee, but at least I've got a job to do that day.
And you've got supportive people around
Yep.
you.
Yep. Spot on. So, you know, and I count my blessings every day because, you know, to be in that position where we could do that and it didn't matter if it was running itself into the ground financially or not, you know, I'm really lucky that we had that opportunity because, you know, I know there's a bunch of blokes out there who are in those circumstances and they don't have something there that's bigger than themselves to keep saying, hey, keep getting up, bro. You're really right. Just keep coming, and you'll be fine.
It mattered. You just mattered more.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's not that it didn't matter, but you know what I mean. Like it's.
Well, you know, I think it's a really important thing when you're not in a great mental state to have a reason to get out of bed.
That's it. Absolutely. On his worst days, we didn't know if he'd come out of the bedroom. We didn't know, you know, if he would shoot through. We didn't know where, for how long, to do what. And so because I was traveling so much overseas, we did have the little kids in the house. For my own sanity, I couldn't leave them at home with him. And so having him have to go down to the coffee shop and do work and all the rest of it, again, made him feel like he had somewhere to go and something to be a part of. But it also meant that I could ask my mother-in-law to come up and she would be in the house with the kids and all that. So it was covering a lot of bases in that regard. But I think anyone who goes down a mental health path and loses their career because of a traumatic experience.
And not just a career.
Yeah.
This was your dream, wasn't it? This was what you wanted to do.
It's definitely, you know, it's kind of like in the movie Fury, you know, it's that part where they're sitting around saying it's the best job I ever, like it honestly was. It gave me so much, you know, and it was, you know, maybe when I was a younger man, it wasn't necessarily my, you know, I want to be an astronaut sort of move, but it was always there around the surface, around the side, sort of just hinting and being there, that when I finally did join up, it was like, this is home. You know, for me, this is home. I say to people, you know, they go, oh, you're doing all right in this and doing all right in that, or how'd you find the army? And I'm like, it's the only thing I felt like I was really good at. It's the only thing I ever felt. And the whole time I felt like I was in over my head. But it was honestly the only thing I
kind of like, is this real? Like, am I really this real?
Like, I am not qualified to do this much shit. Like, honestly, like, you should not be trusting me with all these things. Like, it's not, you know, and
I'm sure you're not alone there.
No doubt, you know. So yeah, but that brought me through to that patch where we, you know, bought the coffee shop and we were starting to get some answers. We were starting to get an understanding of where things were at. But go forward a few years, we've got 3 kids now, and we're coming to the end of the time where we're owning the coffee shop. We sort of had a strategic plan. We wanted to get back here to the Central Coast because that's where our families were, you know, or Kaz's mum was.
Yep. My
family's here on the coast, or was here on the coast at the time, and so having young babies, it was going to be good to have grandparents around to help support. Plus also we wanted to keep an eye on Kaz's mum, make sure she's healthy and everything like that. So we'd made that decision to sort of, we're going to buy a house down here on the coast. Kaz was going to move with all the babies, and I would follow once we tied up the loose ends on the shop. Now, at that time too, I started getting some messages from different guys I'd worked with in the Defence Force who were out now or were getting out, and there was some jobs working for essentially contracting for Department of Immigration, working as security staff on Manus Island in PNG. So I started to work through the application process there to get that all through. Didn't get through with the first company. And then that's when that first riot on Manus Island happened, where there's that a young fella named Reza got killed by a Papua New Guinean. They shut down the contract then for those guys. That was for G4S. It's probably the second biggest security firm in the world. And they said, like, nah, you guys are just running this like cowboys. So they moved across to a company called Wilson Security. You've probably seen them if you're in a major city in Australia. You've probably seen Wilson Parking or Wilson Security. They do a bunch of stuff. They merge out. Started working for that company and got a ticket to be on those jobs. So it just fell into the right timing. We found somebody to take over the shop for us. And I had a few weeks there where we turned around, sold up, cleaned up, and I moved down, followed Kaz. And that essentially that was when I met my team members for I was selected for essentially a response team working up there. So we were specifically trained for responding to high level incidences on the island. And so that's where I sort of found jiu-jitsu, because my team leader at the time, Julian, was a amateur mixed martial arts fighter. He'd done pretty well back in New Zealand, and he was sort of looking for I think he was trying to tee up a cadetship or like a traineeship style thing with, I think it was Tiger Muay Thai up in Koh Samui, maybe, up in Thailand. Mm-hmm. So he was looking for that. He was talking to them, and they were like, yeah, sweet, we like your videos, come on up, we'll set you up, you can live here, eat here, but you fight out of this gym. And he was looking to enter 1FC, which is, I think it's still the world's biggest promotion. It's just not the world's best known promotion for mixed martial arts and fighting. And so me and a few of the boys from the team just came to Julian and said, like, you need training partners. We want to know more stuff. I'm like, I know there is striking. I know there's punching, but I don't know what boxing looks like. I've done karate for a bunch of years, so I know I can throw a bunch of kicks, but how does that work with mixing it up with fists and then, go the other way? How does it work when we get to the ground? And that's where we found jiu-jitsu. And so we started doing some grappling and doing some pad work.
So was he kind of teaching you guys? Like, was he running a class and then having roles, or
not really?
How formal was it?
About
or was it backyard?
Yeah, we kind of got one lesson to teach us how to, I guess, work combos on pads.
Go garage and go down one lower.
Yeah, it was pretty. And then we were just like a bunch of guys trying to roll around and just like try and rip each other apart, essentially. Like,
oh, right. So it's like, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Yeah, like it was guys that had
Totally.
enough devastating capacity in their bodies, but not enough clue about what any of it meant. Like, I remember getting one of the first times I rolled with somebody, he literally bit me. Because he forgot, I was wrist locking him, which because we were doing a lot of security stuff, so wrist locks are really, really there. It's right at the front of your mind. I was like, fuck, I'm going to wrist lock this cunt. And I wrist locked him, and he's there, and he's not tapping, and I'm like, fuck, I'm going to have to really do this. And I'm going, got his hand bent so far down, and then the cunt just bit me. And I'm like, what the fuck are you biting me for? And he's like, it hurt. And I go, what about the tap? And he goes, oh, fuck, bro, I'm sorry, man. Hey.
I forgot about that.
And I was like, okay, all right.
I just want to know how much money he owes to the swear jar
I was
right
just
now.
going to say, this has gone R-rated.
Yeah. See, fucktards aren't so bad now, is it?
Yeah, it seems nice and clean up until this point.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so that's where I sort of got to understanding what jiu-jitsu was and what it looked like. And I was working 3 weeks on, 2 weeks off, essentially. So when I'd come back, I'd sort of drop in. Kaz had found a martial arts school that she had started the kids in, or was starting the kids in a little bit. And so I just go along there and just jump into some of their classes. They had a kickboxing coach, so I'd jump in and do that class. They had a straight boxing coach, so I'd do a few of those classes. And then there was, one guy was running, actually Berkey was running the MMA class.
Berkey?
Yeah, Berkey.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's when I first met Berkey, all those years ago. And he was running their MMA class, and it kind of worked for him because he could run a couple of classes, but then he could also have his fighters in there, and he could get a few guys working.
Yep.
So that all worked well. Long and the short of that one was, it sort of, Berkey, for whatever reason, had a disagreement with the owner, and Berkey took off. So then we had another guy came in from Tiago's gym, a young fella named Jaden. He was teaching the classes, and he was a lovely dude, super nice. I've run into him a few times since. I don't know if he still trains at all or not. It's been a bunch of years now. But he started, and he was a blue belt. And so he was running the class, and then this is like a memory lane of fucking guys that we all know. And then he got pulled from that job. I think Tiago found out that he was doing that coaching, and he said, no, we're not doing that, sir. And so he suddenly was just like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Then they found Kieran Hewitt. So Kieran Hewitt came in, and Kieran's a sweetheart. He just looks rough, and that. But and he comes across as rough, but he's a sweetheart. he started training and he's training the classes. And I think he lasted about 2 months. And then, you know, the wheels started falling off a little bit for him. And it was like, okay, so Kieran's not turning up to classes occasionally. And then it kind of got to be my job to make sure Kieran turned up to class. And then if Kieran wasn't in class, it was my job to sort of try and figure out something to teach.
Oh, so
yeah, like,
you became the TIC.
Oh my God. I was
with all your experience
as a white belt.
As a white belt.
Dude, I was maybe a one stripe at that point, like a one stripe white belt. And Gary's like, yeah, just run him through some stuff. And I'm like, I'm a laughing stock.
All right. So just putting it out there, like I don't know this school or anything like that, but I'm seeing a common denominator that maybe it's not the coaches that are the issue.
Jiu-Jitsu is not their forte.
A little higher up that was anyway.
Yeah, this thing's going on. So
I want to say one thing about Matt too. When he finds something, whether it's the army or when he did his masters, you know, the coffee shop and then jiu-jitsu, Matt's got that personality that he super focuses on, and he needs to have something to focus on. And so there was a big period there where, as we were transitioning from army and then a couple of years and then into Manus Island and then out of Manus Island, where because there wasn't something for him to focus on, it would make the black periods more regular, more often. Yeah. And so we would see these sides of him still quite frequently. And then it wasn't until, you know, he'd sort of transitioned and found that thing that became jiu-jitsu.
So it became a bit of a passion.
Yeah, definitely.
So at what point did you say, hang on, well, as a one-stripe white belt, maybe I don't know it all. I need to go to a higher power
from day one.
See, well, because that's funny too, right? Because at that point there, after a couple of times, and like it's comical to think about too, but there'd been even patches there where I was literally driving around Springfield, just laps of the streets, just seeing if Kieran was there. And I'm like looking at class time going, fuck, it's about to start. Call Gary, Gary, I'm still looking for him. He goes, give it 10 more minutes and if not, come in here. And then I was like, okay, cool. So 5 past class starts and I drive back to Gary's and I'm like, there's no coach. He goes, can you just put him through something? It's like, okay, did that the first week. And then it come to a patch, like after that first time, I was like, oh shit, this is a problem. But Kieran had said to me, he goes, look, dude, he goes, if this is what you like to do and this is something you enjoy, he said, while I'm here, train with me for sure. But if for whatever reason, you know, I'm not here or, you know, we're further down the track and you need more, he said, here's where I want you to go. And he sent me over to Danilo at Gracie Barra Central Coast. And so I'd started to drop in there and take classes. So essentially for a couple of weeks there, I was literally taking what I'd learned at Gracie Barra and trying to transpose it for these guys up here at this class and just make it work. I think 2 or 3 weeks of that, and I was just like, I can't do this. This is not, like, hand on heart, I can't be teaching this class. I'm literally taking somebody else's techniques or curriculum and using them for you, and I'm not getting paid for starters, which means I'm not insured, which also means that, you know, this could all go real fucking bad.
And the blind leading the blind.
Exactly, exactly that. So, you know, that's how I've wound up working with Danilo for so many years, is that was then the next port of call for me. I said, Gary, I got to go. Went across to Danilo, signed up there and continued my journey for a bunch of years.
So was it like a relief for the brain? Like, do you remember those early days of training? How did it make you feel? Did you come away exhilarated? Did you come away tired? Like, what was going through your head in those early days for you?
Yeah. I think in the early days, it's really hard to say. You know, and I'll take a slight step back there too. You know, going through the patch while we were owning the coffee shop and everything, you know, I really struggled with a bunch of my symptoms, you know, taking responsibility for my actions and things like that. But there was a big part there where prior to the injury, you know, I was in the gym a lot. I was essentially doing a lot of powerlifting. So I was very strong. I wasn't big, but I was very, very strong. And you know, later on, doctors would tell me that, like, if you didn't have the conditioning you have around your neck and shoulders, then you might well have been dead.
Right.
So that was a bonus then. But when I had the accident, and they don't tell you this because it doesn't happen to everybody, but when your nervous system gets that big old reset, sometimes nothing fires right anymore. So you have a significant, probably like for me, it was like 60 to 70% of my overall strength was just in the toilet, just done. So that led me to a path of substance abuse, right? So I was never one for getting drunk. I'd never been a drinker or anything like that. You know, I wasn't into recreational drugs, but steroids was my drug of choice in this. So
just to try and get that strength back.
Yeah, I just wanted to be, I figured if I lifted and I threw myself into the gym, got as big as possible, then my strength would be there and I'd feel better. And I was just chasing it. But you're chasing something that's not necessarily, you know, even able to obtain. And certainly not by that method. So
it was also his hideout.
Yeah.
2 or 3 hours at the gym on his own in isolation with just his headphones on, nobody to yell at, nobody to offend, nobody to upset. It was his hideout.
Yeah, 100%. So, when I found jiu-jitsu, you know, obviously it was a very enjoyable thing for me, you know, just, I guess, it's the combat aspect to me. You know, a big chunk of that is just combat, just going to war, you know, just, I guess, testing yourself that much. So, you know, my first few proper classes at a proper jiu-jitsu school, it was a bit different than what I'd come to expect, but I was like, okay, cool, this is it. And I really liked rolling, which I think, you know, who doesn't like rolling? If you don't like rolling, I'd really question as to why you do the sport anyway. But yeah, and that part particularly, you know, that was just amazing. That was so incredible. Even if, you know, and I always take my wins in perspective too in sport, and I always have to a degree, you know. If I got the shit beaten out of me on one particular thing, but I didn't get subbed. Okay, cool. That's my win. And then, which is its own problem, right? Because then you just work on not being subbed all the time and things like that. But just the raw, you know, testing of one's mettle against another person, just, you know, that's what really did it for me. It's just nothing there that's ever like that combat sort of aspect there.
I've heard a lot of veterans say it stops the noise. Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
So a lot of times, you know, and I'll start out with this, and that is that, you know, most people in civilian world go, I couldn't do what you did. I couldn't deploy overseas. I couldn't do that. I couldn't shoot at somebody. I couldn't, you know.
Pull dead bodies out of wells.
Exactly that, you know. And the reality is, on our end of town, you know, most of us don't realise it while we're in, but we look at you guys and we're like, I don't want to do what you do. I don't want to have to deal with being in a civilian world. You know, especially once you're out in a civilian world, you're like, this is way too complex. Way too complex, way too complicated to be effective. I don't feel like I can actually, you know, be effective in any one area of my life because there's so many areas now. You know, I've got bills, I've got people talking to me, I've got teachers, I've got kids, I've got wives, I've got families, all the things, you know, and any of them have feelings, emotions, preferences, whatever. And they all have their own relevance to me, but they've also got their own level of importance to themselves. And so you're constantly trying to battle that. Combat, like being in the army is easy, super easy, nothing hard about it. Like it's physical hardship, that's about it. You know, a little bit of mental hardship, but mostly physical hardship. That's nothing. You know, you can eat that all day. It's this other complex situation that requires a nuanced outlook that's really, really difficult for a lot of us.
Is that because you're just following orders? Like someone's there making the decisions and tells you you've got to be in position A at this time doing this? Or
yeah,
so it takes all the other stuff out of
the
equation.
Yeah, absolutely. You get awarded for achieving, you know, you get that little pat on the head. So you get that little dopamine serotonin spike, you know, where you're like, oh, I'm a good boy. I did the thing right. That person who yells at me normally doesn't yell at me now. Maybe they're even smiling a little bit. That's cool. All right, I'm going to be a good boy forever. You know, and it sounds really, really simple, but, you know, a lot of times in military is pretty much full of neurodiverse characters, whether it's autism or ADHD. And ultimately, for the ADHD in us, we haven't got a lot of positive reinforcement. We've got a shit ton of negative reinforcement. So it's like, oh, I don't care. That's normal. But the second you start going, that dude is an absolute stud. He fucking hangs with everybody. He outrucks everybody. He outlifts everybody. And he's here early every time. He's a fucking sterling fella. Like, that's something that you go, I could be a good boy too. I could do those things. Like, that's achievable for me. But, you know, finding the right balance point on a fucking, you know, a tally sheet for something I don't care about that has really no basis onto living and dying for regular people just does not interest me. It's far too nuanced and niche down.
Civilian life got boring for you.
It's far too complex. It's even today. Like,
This is why I used to say in your early competitions and that.
Yeah.
Like, Matt couldn't fire up in competition because it wasn't a life or death threat to him.
Right.
There was no adrenaline level like what he had ever experienced.
When you've been to a war zone
twice, yeah.
probably everything else is not quite ever going to be that scary.
And if you watch him in the first few years of it took him a long time to realise, oh, hang on, you consciously have to engage here. You have to, points matter, time matters. Like, if you want to compete, this is the world that you have to step into. Whereas for him, he'd go into every competition and the bell would ring and he'd be like, oh, did we finish? Damn.
All right.
keep going.
On we go.
Yeah.
What do you think is the draw card for veterans and first responders? Because we do see that a lot of veterans and first responders find solace and find their thing on the jiu-jitsu mats. Where does the crossover happen? Where do they go, jiu-jitsu feels enough like what I used to get, that this feels like home, but at the same time it turns down the noise on everything else that I'm carrying around with me?
Yeah, I'd say the common ground there in that one is, you know, probably crippling levels of anxiety, terrible levels of autism and ADHD. Definitely are fucking play cards there, because you've got two groups of people, unbeknownst to themselves, that already drag those people in. So we kind of already speak the same language when we're a vet, or whether we, you know, long-term doing jiu-jitsu, because that's the mindset. That's that little one that's, I want to find out how this problem works so I can solve this problem, you know, or I need to work out how to get around this because it's giving me grief. Essentially, warfighting and jiu-jitsu is same concepts. It's high-level problem solving, you know, potentially with catastrophic results either way, but generally in jiu-jitsu you have a little bit more nerfing on, so you're a bit safer, which is nice.
Yeah, I don't think tapping works in war.
No, not so much.
The waving the white
Yeah,
flag.
tap. Please don't shoot.
I surrender.
You know, and so the army is already, you know, for combat arms corps guys, we're already got to be very physically active. So there's that aspect as well. You know, we like, well, some of us do. Some of us love it. Some of us like it, and some of us acknowledge that it's something that we need inside us, but we don't necessarily enjoy. And, you know, that's the physical struggle. You know, you get up every day in the army and you do PT. You know, a big chunk of your job and being able to do that in the field is very physically active and very physically tiring. So you start to associate a lot of productive activity and productive mindset with this physical struggle. You know, so I think that definitely is something that would attract somebody who is a defense member or an ex-military member. Then there is, you know, that mindset thing that I was talking about before, where, you know, jiu-jitsu is already full of people who think about things in an isometric fashion. You know, not a simple, you know, problem. Here's a problem. Here's a solution. X, Y, Z. It's like, here's multi-level tiers of problems coming at you, and you've got to try and work out which other ways you've got to try and break this problem down. You know, that's the isometric battle space that we find ourselves in Iraq and Afghanistan. Very much like jiu-jitsu. You know, you've got this multi-tiered. You know, we use the analogy of 3D chess a lot. It's exactly it. Like, and for guys that have a fast-running mind that want to look for edges and problems, like, it's like candy for that. You know, it's already going to feed into those dopamine cycles, those serotonin loops you've already got preordained in your head from some drill instructor or some training sergeant or something somewhere. And then you also get really, really, I guess, well-versed in the idea of trauma bonding. You know, regardless of how you get it done or how it happens, you know, ultimately that's the way it gets done in the army. You know, we trauma bond our people because we know that's the most effective way. Well, in jiu-jitsu, there's no way to do jiu-jitsu without trauma bonding somebody. And that's going to happen. You know, the guys that you have the hardest roles with generally are the guys that you end up respecting the most. you know, or they're the guys that you know, look to for answers, or they're the guys that you love to just sit on the side of the mats with and have a chat and watch other people roll, you know, that sort of thing as well.
I want to know, in periods where you've been either sliding into or coming out of a black period, what did jiu-jitsu give to you through those moments?
Look, it definitely gave me a physical representation of how I was feeling some days. You know, so you wake up some days when you're struggling with your mental health. You know, some days can be as simple as like, I just don't feel like very stoked about anything today. And then you've got other days that are like, the second I get the energy, I am going to take my own life. Mm-hmm. The second I get the energy to do that. Where jiu-jitsu helps with that is I kind of feel like there's some aspects there that at least it makes you feel, I guess, the appropriate level of fatigue and tiredness to what you're feeling emotionally at the time. Mm-hmm. So it kind of fixes that disconnect that you have where you're just like, I can't figure this out. And then you start raging against it, which makes it worse. Because on the balance sheet of human emotions, it kind of makes sense now because one's feeling sad and sore and tired and the other one's feeling sad and sore and tired, and they're the same, and that's okay and that's appropriate because we just did jiu-jitsu. I think, you know, the other aspect is that it also gives me a place to be. You know, again, similarly to the shop, you know, there's an expectation there, especially because it's a family sport for us. So because there's so many moving parts in a family, because we have people to consider that's beyond just us as well, you know, we go, okay, well, if the family trains Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then that's the days I go to the gym regardless of anything else. And as we know, routine helps to facilitate survival in depressed states. So you've got everything there built in about a routine. You're going to walk into a gym and people aren't going to just go, oh, it's this fucking cunt again. They're going to turn around and go, hey, Matt. You know, it's Matt guy. But
hey, Matt,
I was
welcome
like
back to the
I was
mats.
trying to say something in Brazilian or sounded Brazilian there. I was like, don't do accents, dude. Don't do that on the podcast. That'll be terrible. But you know what I mean? Like you're going to walk in, you're going to see somebody you had a roll with last week, you know, and in the early days, you know, you're probably just going to nod and go smile. And the guys that have been around forever aren't going to know who you are nor care because you probably won't be here in 6 months, and that's fine. But as you hang around a little bit longer, that just gets deeper and deeper, and then all of a sudden,
the trust gets made, and
and
we
then
think you're going to be here.
Exactly. You know, those guys are taking a chance now because they're going to give you 5 minutes of their time, and they're going to learn actually you're not that different from them, that you're just as broken as they are, and you like the same stuff, and it's cool to do jiu-jitsu together, and cool, we'll have a good time now.
How important was camaraderie?
Look, it's inevitable that it's going to be important. You know, you've got to have some people there because if you don't, you sort of don't have a nice base point for how civilization has to work. You know, if you don't have anybody to show what civilized people interact like, deal with, do things, then you're probably going to digress away from it. And I think having somebody there and you know, you turn up, your friends, your jiu-jitsu friends are generally talking about something to do with jiu-jitsu, you know, a problem they're trying to solve, a funny moment that happened. This class was good this time. The other day, somebody got promoted, whatever, you know. It brings you into the whole, hey, we're all sharing here in this community, in this conversation. Whereas a lot of times the noise in your head will tell you, or the you know, the bad speak in your head will turn around and say like, don't talk, because then everybody's going to realize that you're the fucking problem. You're all the problem, and they're not going to like that, and then you're excommunicated from the group, and that's always bad. And you don't want to be that guy. You want to be the guy that's allowed to stay. So, but when you see that vulnerability in other people, like it helps you bring that out in yourself. You know, that's why it's so important to be, I guess, open and upfront and honest about some of this stuff, because if you can convey the courage to be able to be honest and be upfront about these things, no matter how hard they are or how hard they were at the time, then you can give somebody else that gift too, you know?
Permission to speak, right?
Exactly.
And feeling like you're part of something too. And the more you share, or the more you just, and we're not talking about like going in and just laying everything out for you.
No.
But if you just engage in the conversation with your teammates, and they realize, oh, hey, this guy's cool. He's got a cool perspective. And then you walk around like, oh, I think they like me.
Exactly that. Yeah.
It gives you good feelings. And then when you do hard things and you get through hard things and you come out the other side, there's that sense of achievement, of accomplishment. You might get a stripe. Your coach might go, hey, that was a really good armbar, or yell at you and say, your jiu-jitsu is crap, keep going.
Yeah, exactly that. Like,
Positive and negative.
Still bad at
reinforcement.
jiu-jitsu, bro. I know, but I'm working on it.
Come back tomorrow. Try
Exactly.
again.
But at least you're all in the same boat
Yep.
and you're all working towards a common
You
goal.
all suck.
What about things like, I mean, this is observations I've always had as a coach, and I think in particular for men who may struggle sometimes with expressing themselves, with, women, if we're having a bad day, we'll hug each other and pat each other on the back and look at each other in the eyes and that sort of thing. How important is the physical side of jiu-jitsu to people or to you when you're going through depression, anxiety, all of those feelings when you're at the bottom of the barrel? Like, how is it feel? How does that kind of help to bring you out?
So one of the things that we generally, if you think about the defense as an organization too, our role is specifically their defense nature. So anytime there's an adversary, anytime there's something that we don't like, we don't feel right about, it's about, regaining the initiative. So you try and fix and hold the person you're fighting against. You try and reorientate, and then you try and regain the momentum and through violence of action. What we don't do well is acknowledge the fact that humans actually came up through all our years of evolution touching each other, and that there's actually a chemical response in our bodies when we get touched by another human, that depending on what that touch is, it will affect it, how good, bad, or indifferent it affects you. So you spend a lot of time there creating a circumstance where everything about being too close to you is bad. If we're in a crowd control situation, then everything has to be past an arm's length. Has to be. It can't be any closer, because that's terrible.
Yeah.
That's bad for you, but it's worse for your guy next to you because he's relying on you. And if you're not there doing your job, then he's going to get fucked. And that then that becomes his own cycle too. And that's a slight digression, but it becomes his own cycle of, I'm going to do the most thing, the most way, the most how possible, because I don't want anybody to think that I'm not doing everything I can to be there for them. And part of that is, we go forward to jiu-jitsu, and you now have to become very familiar and very comfortable at being right at the bleeding coalface of contact. It's the entirety of everything all around you all at once, and in compromising positions, in positions where it's painful and not feeling good, but you get used to the touch, you come to welcome the touch, you then look for opportunities to touch in a more effective way, and then you look to execute on how you're going to use that to your best advantage. So you kind of get this nice loop.
You made that all sound real beautiful, and what you actually meant was you're going to get into a role, you're going to figure out how to kill the person, and then find a way to choke them.
A little bit, yeah.
I don't want to put it into real perspective here. Because it sounded really lovely the way you described it.
Yeah, but stretched. I'm thinking about it like a bit more stretched out than one role. Like over time, you sort of. I remember when I first started. My big thing was being like, I had this thing about not being stoppable, not being submittable. That was my thing. I just, if I can learn how to be that,
So you wanted to be unsubmittable.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. And so.
Where were you in the journey for this? How far through?
Oh no, very early.
Right. Okay.
Very early in the piece, I was.
So I'm going to be an unsubmittable. We've got guys like that, I reckon.
Yep.
Yeah, they come in like, you're not going to submit me. It's like, cool, but what are you going to learn?
That's it. Yeah. It slowed my whole progression down massively. Being the guy that's just too hard to submit, because you hang out in spots, right? And then again, you get told to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations, so you get comfortable, but then you're not motivated to get out of those situations anymore.
That's right.
Yeah. And that becomes its own sort of, I guess, double-edged blade, is that, whilst you're comfortable now in these bad spots, you don't fight out of them as hard as you should. And so you've got to sort of temper that a little bit. How did
it, back to the question a bit though, you're in a depressive state, you're in a black hole.
Yep.
And what was the motivation to actually get up and go to class at that point?
It can vary for me. So sometimes, especially early in the days, it was just the excitement of the new thing. The excitement of the new thing was huge, just to get you up and get going. Well, today sucks, but I still got this. And even if nothing else good happens today, then that was fun. And then you go a bit further forward and you kind of, I guess you wind up in a situation where you've been going for a while now. It's all still new and you're learning. You're starting to know people and you're starting to get some traction. You feel like you're getting somewhere. And so that would then motivate you, because if then you get into this whole cycle of like, if I miss a class, I'll slow my progression. It's like I'm so locked into this sport that I think that something that would normally take somebody, a year at absolute best to get from white to blue belt, and probably, realistically, if we're being practical about it, should probably take you up to 2 years, but you are 100% certain that if you miss that one class on Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock, you are not going to be able to beat the guys you could beat last week.
Yep.
And so then that gives you that kind of, now I have almost created a situation where I'm anxious about not attending. So then now I attend regardless of how I feel, because I don't want the anxiety of not attending. So even though I'm in a depressed state and I'm going, all right, I got to go to class, right? I've got to do the thing. And which works in perfectly with the defense mentality, because we're designed to go and look for things that we don't necessarily want to do, but just go, well, fuck, it's time to eat a shit sandwich again and go do the thing. Again, this is that mentality. Plus, you also have that kind of throwback to, I don't want to be the one to let the team down. Anyone else, as far as I'm concerned, can let the team down and we'll all give them shit and that'll be fun. But it can't be me, because if it's me, I don't know if the world will still be there tomorrow if it was me. That's all I know. And so you've kind of got all these built up expectations on yourself around that. And some of it's, it's probably damaging over the long term, but in those moments too, sometimes it's I feel like it's probably positive to put so much emphasis on that one next class, because it's going to get you up. It's going to get you clean. It's going to get your clothes on. It's going to get you packed. It's going to get you out the door on time. You're going to come home and you'll probably feel tired and hungry. So then if you at least eat, well, there's another thing you've accomplished today that you probably wouldn't have if you'd laid in bed. And
because you put so much emphasis on it, and because it gave you so much in that regard, the periods in which you couldn't do it for whatever reason were detrimental.
Oh, definitely. Like, you definitely feel like it builds up over time. It's a cumulative effect. You could probably do a couple of days in the early stages, but then when it got beyond that, it started to become, really difficult to, it would certainly, you'd be frustrated and it'd affect your mind state for sure.
Yep.
So you'd probably be a little bit shorter with people. You probably wouldn't be as, I guess, as gentle as you could be with the rest of the world.
It was a lifeline for you, but it also had that negative aspect too. If for whatever reason you couldn't get to jiu-jitsu, it was like taking away the drugs that were making him calm.
Well, and that's I was literally thinking the same analogy just then, is that, if I hadn't taken my meds a couple of days, then I would also have that. So
that's right.
It's very much, it's not a medication thing, but it is a chemistry thing too. If you can get those chemistry things rolling a little bit, well then, your tomorrow doesn't look quite as bad. Well, if you take your meds consistently, your chemistry balances out. Tomorrow and the next day don't look too bad.
Where do you think you would have been if you didn't find jiu-jitsu?
Fuck, who knows? I mean, it's very cliche for people to say that jiu-jitsu saved my life. And I wouldn't say that jiu-jitsu was the only thing that saved my life, but I would say that there's a percentage there that owes itself to jiu-jitsu for sure. Absolutely. For all the reasons I've discussed today and more. There's not one particular aspect of jiu-jitsu that sort of saved me, but there's definitely, even if it's just, maintaining my physical, abilities, making sure that I'm staying strong, making sure that I'm eating properly, making sure I'm doing all those things, at least then if I'm fueling my body correctly, I have every opportunity of having a positive mind state, as simple as that. I'd say it's one of the gold standard aspects to where I am now that has kept me here and keeps me here and is going to keep me here.
And I feel like it's probably getting simplified to the act of jiu-jitsu itself, but really it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, like, it's giving you somewhere to be at a certain time. I have to get up, I have to be showered, I have to be ready, I have to have my drink, my clean clothes, my this, my that. So there's an organization into even just getting out the door.
Yep.
And then you've got to drive there, and then you've got to show up. You've got to be there on time. Otherwise, you might get ribbed by your teammates a little bit, or, whatever. Then you do the class. There's a learning process that happens. There's an engaging of the mind.
There's a growth process.
There's a growth. Or, even some of those nights where you're doing a class that your coach has taught before, because everything cycles through. Yeah. But it's one little detail that you just go, oh, I never thought of it like that before, you know, and you've got that spark of renewed energy, and then it's time to roll, and you've got your teammates, and someone's making a quip over here and someone's making a joke over there, and it's the energy of the room, and you vibe off that, right?
100%.
So, all these things go into it, and that we haven't even got to the rolling part yet.
Yeah. Yep. That's it.
People that you enjoy hanging out with, like cool people and cool coaches and cool environment and just cool vibes, and then you roll.
Yep.
And then you might be a hammer, you might be a nail, you might be the plank of wood. And if you get all three in one night, it's probably a damn good session.
It's a good night.
It's a really good set, because you don't want to win every round, because then it's like, oh.
I'd like to at least just win one. Just once. Just once.
Come on, buddy.
You're a friggin' handful. Don't even pretend you're not. And then you go home, and then you're like, got the endorphins happening. I've got that flush to my cheeks.
Yep.
He would come home when he first started jiu-jitsu, and again, like, it's important to understand that the wheels fell off after the army. We saw horrific components, and we almost lost him a few times. But the end of Manus was no better. So the wheels fell off again, and he went straight back down into that black hole. The first sort of, 12 months of jiu-jitsu over with Gracie Barra was when that was the first time in probably, 5 years post the accident that I actually started to see a resemblance of the man I married.
I was just about to ask you that question. When did the penny drop for you, Kaz, that there was something a little bit magical about this?
It was about 12 months in, and as I said before, Matt fixates. He zones in through ADHD, addictive personality, whatever the reasons, and there's a myriad. But he will hold on to something, and that's it, right? Whether it was weights, the army, whatever. So jiu-jitsu started to become this thing, and I'm like, well, that's cool. At least, we have something that he's focusing on. So that will be, I'll grab onto that, I'll gravitate, and I'll support it. He would come home from training nights, and there would just be this level of happy and a genuine happy, right? And it's not like he wasn't happy to be married to me. It's not like he wasn't happy to be a family and a father, but
it's an internal thing, isn't it?
Everything that had been taken away was so heavy, and we were such a part of that process that we couldn't give that to him in that moment. There's just no way we could. And so, and I had transitioned from being the wife to the carer. So we didn't even have a sort of resemblance of a relationship at that point, because I was still in carer's mode. About a year in, and the kids had sort of come close to start, or they'd started. It was after Willow and Adelaide had started. And we just started talking like we had used to. It was like all of a sudden there were more better days, and you could start to almost count. Like, it was worthwhile counting the better days, because they were starting to outnumber the carers' days, the buffering and protecting children days, and the copping of the screaming and the anger, and those days were starting to appease, and it was leading into his blue belt. So he had started coming home going, I think I'm close, and it was almost like this was the key that would unlock the door that says, I'm here forever. And I went to his blue belt grading, and I got to see the people that were rallying around him, and I got to see what the community was bringing to the table, how accepting they were of him and how embracing they were. And they knew nothing. They knew nothing about it or anything like that. And that's exactly how he wanted it to be. And he was building this friendships and anyway, I started to get my husband back. We started to transition back into the role of husband and wife and best friends, and the world got a little bit lighter, and it just went on from there. And, you know, I'm not saying that in the past 9-10 years he hasn't had bad periods, because he has, as have I, but we've been able to lean on not only our friends, our non-jiu-jitsu people, but by and large, we've really lent on jiu-jitsu people to help us get through those moments. And that, to me, you know, I'll be forever grateful.
Were you instantly aware that there was a shift in you?
No, not at all.
Are you aware now, looking back, that there was a shift in you?
Yeah, I think I do. I do recognise that. I mean, I recognise a bunch of different traits and I guess reordering of things that jiu-jitsu did to help me in that sense, you know, even down to, you know, an adversarial mindset. You know, if you have an argument with somebody, you know, you generally say some things and then most of the time you walk away and you're like, I should have fucking said that. You know, but all of a sudden, like I noticed...
You should have or you shouldn't have?
I should have said that.
Oh, should have said that.
It's all those moments where you go, oh, when they said that, I should have come back with this.
And I still have those moments. I think everybody still has those moments where you know, yell at yourself in the mirror or whatever. But I noticed it. I think the first real thing that sticks out of my head for that one was there was actually a situation occurred between a couple of the kids on the mats. And I was obviously a mat dad, and there was another mat dad there, and I was up training with the I think it was the competition team at the time. So I was upstairs, and there was noise and carry on. And I got asked by Kaz, because I think Kaz was in a normal class, and I'd been training with the team. Kaz bumped me and said, "Hey, listen, can you go check out what's going on downstairs, because our kids are fucking all blubbering and whatnot." They've been excluded from the group of kids, and there was this one particular pair of kids that were, you know, one sister was pretty decent, pretty handy at jiu-jitsu and was getting a lot of accolades and praise for it. And dad was one of those jiu-jitsu parents that, you know, gets all their success from what their kid does on the mats. And so I walked down.
So doesn't train himself?
He started training a while after
Yep.
that. So,
but he was, even before he started training, he was coaching his daughters from the side
it's just
of the
retarded.
mat.
Sorry, I
It was
shouldn't say
just horrid.
retarded, but it was definitely something that was definitely not good. And I went down and I said to the kids, I said, listen, this is everybody's gym. Everybody gets to be wherever they want, including my daughters. So here's the thing. If you tell them anything else again, if you tell them that they're going to get out of this group because it's not for them, you can shut the fuck up and we'll do this in front of everybody with your parents. Anyway, flash forward another day and I get fronted by this dad and he's like, yeah, it's funny that you talk about, you know, respect and things like that, Matt, but I mean, you swore at the kids the other day. I said, listen here, cunt face. And so I didn't have that sort of gap where most people get like, oh, somebody's having a go at me and, oh, I don't like that. And why are they doing? No, I just went straight to, you're wrong. I knew what this was about. I knew where it was about. I knew the details, the left and right of arc, and I knew exactly where he sat in the scheme of things. And I had all this strategic mindset with it, to the point where every time he turned around and talked, I would talk him into another loop, which inevitably came back to one single statement, which was, if you keep on with this passive-aggressive shit, I'm going to put you in a mayonnaise jar and throw you out on the road. And then he goes, oh, why are you being like this? I don't know. And long and the short of it, he came back around and he goes, I feel like we should hug now. I'm like, fuck. Right, I've got to touch somebody.
And they're not like trying to choke me out, so it's weird.
Yeah, that's it. Eh? Like, but the whole time through there, my mindset was very clear. It wasn't this whole chaotic mess or anything like that. You know, it helped just put things in a better perspective for me. And it helped me in a patch there where I was kind of anchorless. You know, I kind of didn't have a good grounding in what was reality and what, you know, there was a part of my brain that wasn't really in touch with things because of so many convoluted situations, you know, so many things had been sort of said to be one thing and turned out to be another. I just didn't have anything. There was a solid foundation about how to be, and it sort of kind of gave me that back, you know, by reordering reordering the way I was like attacking a problem.
Yep.
Yep.
Wow.
100%.
It's cleared up a lot.
Yeah.
And to you know, he lost a lot because of the injury, and the work that he's had to do since then is phenomenal. So again, you know, you can put all the right tools in front of a person, but unless they're prepared to learn how to use them, it means nothing. The tool is rendered useless. And this is probably one of the biggest things that we try and advocate through mental health or through any trauma-based reaction, is that you have to be your own first and foremost cheerleader. You have to find your want. You have to find your drive. Even on the days where if you just have enough energy to get up, you'll kill yourself, you have to find something in there that is a seed to hold on to. And unless you're prepared to do that, then you will stay exactly where you are, or it will go worse. And nobody can do that for you. You can have all of the people around you supporting you, but unless you're prepared to do the work, then, you know, it becomes a really tough day, and it stays a really tough day.
Yeah, look, we get a lot of people come into Iconic and over the years, you know, and telling us a little bit about their stories and stuff. And there's people that come in and they're really quiet. They just get on with it and get the work done and stay. And you hear later on about how much jiu-jitsu actually really did help them.
Yep.
And then you get people that come in and they're and also both sides in the opposite way as well. But you get people that come in and will tell you where they're currently at, and that this is their thing that's going to help them, and this is, you know, they're going through this, they're going through that, and they just kind of just don't put the work in.
Yeah.
And I look and I just, and, you know, Grant and I will talk about people. We can do everything that we can do to try and help them, support them, send them messages, invite them back on the mats, tell them we're going to train with you, or we're going to be your biggest cheerleaders, and give them all the praise and support and this and that and everything else. And it doesn't make any difference because they, at the end of the day, they don't want to help themselves.
That's right.
Yep.
So it says really huge things for you. And I know that you said before, like, and it was probably the thing, it took my breath away when you verbalized it, when you said, you know, there's some days that you just go, man, as soon as I get enough energy, I'm just going to finish things, right? Like that's,
Just get it done.
whoa, you know, that was really heavy. And you almost like glossed over it. It sort of took me a second to go, did he just say that? Like, let me think. No, he did say that. But it's huge credit to you that you were willing to do it, because no one else can do it for you.
No, that's it.
You know, your wife can be as supportive as they can be.
Yep.
Your coaches can be, your friend group can support you every step of the way. But unless you get up and get in there and do it, it's not going to help or make any difference. So,
and as you know, we're doing this documentary at the moment, and Matt makes a reference on it on the documentary. It can be anything. It can be surfing. It can be soccer. It can be going to the library and joining a fucking book club. We don't care. Like, find something that's gonna give you a reason to get out of bed and repurpose the energy.
what is it? Find your why.
Find your why.
Well, Jocko says it too. He makes references like, find your next mission. What's the next mission? You know, and that gives you, you know, that's your roll on, right? Like when you're on operations, you know, you go from job to job to job, or in their case, they refer to mission to mission to mission. You know, what's your next mission? All right, well, I finished one. Okay, cool. What's the next one? Because if you're not looking forward and not doing that stuff, you know, like there's no, it's not a massive coincidence that both our eyes face forward, that we have sharp teeth, that our feet face forward and the knees bend the way they do. We're ultimately a predator. And as we know, if predators aren't out actively pursuing, then they're dead. You know, it's no different for us. You know, if we're not actively getting out there, then we might as well be dead. We're stagnant. You know, even if we're still physically alive. I mean, I've seen plenty of human composters where they sit there and take up 40 years of doing the perpetual nothing.
Yep.
You know, it's the same old shit. Oh, I watch this soap on television. Cool. I have my same meal that I have every Wednesday night. Yep, sweet. I'm in bed by 9. No worries. Wake up again, still me.
Yep.
You know, but it's find that next mission. Where's the next job?
I like that book, Make Your Bed, right? Because if you achieve one thing every day, that's an achievement. You know, even if it is just getting out of bed and making it and walking away from the bed, that's an achievement. Like, hold on to the little things.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be a black belt. It doesn't have to be a 10-year commitment. It can be, you know, define goals for a 6-month period and then build bigger goals from there.
Yep. Do one roll.
That's
Turn
it,
up.
right?
Turn up. Yeah.
Do a drill.
Don't sit in the car park instead of doing the class this time.
Yep.
You know, that
and
sort of thing.
don't put Tuesday night off because you think you'll go Wednesday night. We've talked about this a lot, right? If you're going
Front load your week.
Yep.
if you're
Get
going
it
to
done.
do it. And, you know, again, hats off to Matt, because not his children, not me, his wife, not his friends could have kept him here. He had to want to be here.
Yeah.
So do the work, people. Do the work.
What's the hardest part about jiu-jitsu?
Sucking at it. That's the part that's hardest about jiu-jitsu. No, I was going to say it was that, or that's the jiu-jitsu response for whenever you ask somebody how their jiu-jitsu is going.
I was
If they
gonna
say
say
it
keep
sucks,
it
it's
clean.
like that's how you know they do jiu-jitsu properly, because they think they suck. And the other one, fuck now. What was the question again? What do you?
What's the hardest part
Oh,
about jiu-jitsu?
I was going to say me while doing jiu-jitsu. No.
God help us. You did say it was R-rated, right?
R-rated, yeah.
I had no choice over that.
We have to put flashing lights up at the start.
Look, I'd say today, I don't find we all find our own individual struggles in jiu-jitsu, but nothing's hard about jiu-jitsu today. You know, back in the day, back at the previous gym I was at, there was probably more days that were hard than there weren't. You know, since getting my black belt, going through the ordeal, having my hand explode, getting that fixed, now, you know, finding my passion in doing other things like coaching as well, you know, and now I'm back on the mats and my body's starting to get back to the state it was in just prior to that unfortunate incident. You know, it's effortless. It's even the hard days are effortless.
I was going to say the same thing. It's not hard.
You
jiu-jitsu.
both suck. Fuck
No,
off.
it's not. I mean, I was in the veterans class yesterday morning, and what size are we dealing with, Matt? Like, there was
They're not
one other
little
guy under 100 kilos there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That was
it's
it.
one guy.
And
Well,
so two guys.
two guys.
And four?
Four big uns.
That were bigger, over 100 kilos, or at least 6 foot something or other and more, you know. And I was like there, and oh man, I said it was just so easy to just opt out today, so easy to opt out. But I was standing, I've got zero excuse to opt out of rolling with these guys. I'm going to jump in there
You're
and
in.
go for it. And every roll was hard,
Yep.
but it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because it's where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
It's where I feel good. It's where I feel that sense of accomplishment. And all of those positives just far outweigh any hard role. And it's not, even if they're hard, I'm still finding joy in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very much the same now.
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, even if I didn't get done what I thought I should have got done, and I'm still like, yeah, well, you know, you missed the boat on that one. But, you know, even in those moments, the survivability factor and stuff, you know, it's just, yeah, it doesn't take a lot out of me to be there, you know,
And
these
even,
days.
and it's so funny, like, because when you're a coach and one of your students like taps you, there's that like sense of pride as well. So even when you've learned, oh, I suck, but that was awesome.
Yep.
So yeah, like I agree. I don't find jiu-jitsu hard anymore. To me, it's like, it's just a joy. There's some days that are more joyful. There's some days that aren't as joyful, but overall it's a joy. So
I asked Rach and the guys from Roll or Die the other day when we were doing a joint with them, not in the joint sense, but you know what I mean.
You were collaborating.
Collaborating.
Collaboration.
I just realised what I said. And
we
went,
were doing a joint.
Yeah, doing a joint. Did you ever want to quit?
In very, very micro terms, I think there was probably times there, yeah, for sure, especially at the last gym.
Yeah.
Because it was just a meat grinder. Like every day you had to turn up and represent yourself in the most way possible, because if you didn't, then you'd sort of, there was this unspoken about, you know, nobody ever, and Denny certainly didn't put it in place, but it was kind of there's a ranking in the gym, and therefore you were fighting every day that you went in there. Like you were fucking fighting. to stay where you were, and you would get murderously angry when somebody who shouldn't submit you caught you in something, or, you know, if somebody didn't, you know, treat you as a threat or whatever, you know. I found that coming to Iconic actually has changed a lot of that for me. Like, you know, having that permission to be okay with having somebody submit me who is significantly less skilled than me, because I let this situation get so far out of hand that I didn't have any other option but to tap. You know, and then I was like, well, good for them. They capitalized on it now. And you guys lead the way with that, because you give us permission to be okay with that. There's some places where it's not said that it's not okay, but it's definitely not okay if somebody who's not good as you submits you, you know? But I don't even care anymore. And it's affected my rolling. Like, I'm so much more just 2 and 3 and 4 steps ahead, because I'm not fighting anymore. I'm actually going, where's this going? What's my opportunities here? You know, all this pace. It's taken so much of the emphasis off that. It's just changed it so much. And we've got a fairly playful nature as well in Iconic and in the relationship I have with you and you. And with my girls, you know, a lot of my jiu-jitsu these days is very playful. And then that translates over when I'm rolling against my cohort, or, you know, people of same weight, same age, big ugly men. You know, I end up playing the same game with them, and it's still just as effective. It's probably more effective than I've ever been before at jiu-jitsu, because I'm just not that wound up tight about it anymore.
Because you have now permission to explore.
Yeah. Yep. I'm really working on that at the moment too. Like, I'm working on the two of Chris's big things. I'm working on having a guard that no one can pass. So I'm deliberately throwing people passes so that they can try and execute a pass to regain my guard before they get an opportunity. And I'm going through the patch, which I started really early with this one, which was trying to break all the rules. And I started like probably late white belt, early blue belt with that, and then rolled into, now I'm just breaking rules. I'm just like, I'm in the worst position. I'm going to try and cross collar choke you, sir. See how that goes. What the fuck did you
Kaz
pick up
is
on?
losing it.
Yeah,
What's
and
going
she's
on
leading
over
into it.
there?
What are you doing, Lynn? What's going on?
Sorry, Matt. I was listening to you. I'm just distracted.
I'm sorry, but you made a comment, you know, you referred to yourself as big and ugly, and I was going to tell you weren't big, and then I realised telling you you're not big, insinuating you're ugly, is a double shot insult.
Nice.
And I amused myself no end with it. And then I thought better of it.
I'm not
just
feeling so
let you go.
amused. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about my feelings. Because I'm not big, hey. Like,
It's not about the size, Kaz.
I
It's
know,
about how you
but
use it.
I didn't say it. I just self-amused myself, and then you asked. So I had no choice but to say it. I thought it was funny. Anyway, I'm sorry. Keep
It's
going.
I think you.
I completed.
Yeah.
I completed.
You completed. I did try to breathe
I kept
through
it going
it.
like a consummate
No,
professional.
You were awesome, babe. You were fantastic. Hey, what's your hopes for the girls in Jits?
For the girls?
Yeah.
Specifically, as in the ladies or
For
our
our
girls?
children.
Our children.
Yeah. Do you reckon they'll make it to black belt?
Yeah, they will.
Yep.
100% will. They absolutely will. I think I see it being part of their life for the rest of their life. Addie will probably dip in and out a bit.
Yeah.
Scarly will have a very tumultuous relationship with jiu-jitsu for her whole life, I feel.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of her vibe and energy.
Yeah.
And Willow is going to maintain it at some stage or place, because I think she gets a lot out of it from the nurturing side, that she gets a chance to nurture people and do things. But she also likes she's a bit like me in the sense that she likes the hardship. She kind of likes, very early in the piece anyway, and Willow does cadets and things like that, and is the ability to hang became very important for Willow. So the ability to be able to hang in there when the boys are doing PT, the ability to be able to hang there or surpass them when the boys are rolling, the ability to be able to go out there and destroy grown women while she's a teenager, you know, all these things, you know, she
is her father's daughter.
She's like, she loves the opportunity to be the unexpected delight of some situation and then blow the whole situation up. You know, I didn't expect a chick why is this child doing this? Okay, wow, she's destroying women. Okay, cool. All right, that's different. You know, she really she wants to be known as the person who can hang.
I so get that mindset. That's very much like me.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the best compliments I ever had early on, of my jiu-jitsu was when someone said to me, you're not just good for a woman. You're
just good.
You're just good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually sort of, I know I've sort of gone a little bit off the hope there, but that's something that I'm very big on. If I'm talking to my women cohort, like the other women at my level and around like yourself and whatnot, I'm always very, very conscious of not making that mistake of going, oh man, you're probably the best woman in this gym. It's like, no, you're the best grappler. You're, easily top 10 grapplers. Don't fuck around with that whole bullshit about going, you're good for just a woman. Like that. No. I'm not interested in that. Not in this sport, not when my daughters train.
yeah.
You're either good and you can hang, or you're not good and you need to work on some stuff. But it never should come into it about that.
Yep.
Ever, for me. Like, not in that mentality, never, ever, ever. You're capable and you're willing to fucking hang and do it all in the most way possible, or you're not.
Yep, pound for pound.
Yep.
And that's the thing, like often women training partners are way smaller than their male counterparts. So pound for pound, your jiu-jitsu is excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes, man, like it doesn't even matter pound for pound.
100%, like, and it's understanding where people sit in the scheme of things too, like it's like we talk about certain people in the academy have black belt level of something, and it's the first time I'd ever heard that idea. But once I started putting that into my, self-talk or talk about when I'm assessing a person's skills or whatever, as we all do, because that's just what we do. But it's always, with that mindset, just like, are you doing this the most way possible? Can you hang with the people? Okay, yeah, cool, all right. Then you've done all you need to do as far as I'm concerned,
And look, on that mindset too, there's areas of my game that I do not have a black belt understanding of, like leg locks, for example. Like I would say blue belt at best, that's an area that I need to work on, improve. It's across the board for everything. It's just 100%. Like as you go through, how many more areas do you just bring up? How much more of this volume or this level are you just bringing up across the board? So,
and your mental understanding versus your physical capabilities will differ as well.
Absolutely. I think that's important for a coach too. There's stuff that I have to teach that I don't execute at the highest level, but my understanding of it, my ability to express it and verbalize it and teach it, I can do. We had an open mat on the weekend to raise funds for Harbour Combat Sport, who do amazing work for veterans and first responders, and we are closely aligned with them at Iconic, and they sponsor a lot of our veterans and first responders. It's amazing. Anyway, we threw this open mat on to raise funds. We had a note donation at the door, and I had a training partner that I used to train at Iconic and move gyms to a different one for various reasons. He came to support the day, and he asked me for a role, and he was offered in my classes, and I remember I taught him this one side control escape, and for some reason it gelled with him. He understood it, he executed it. Him and I would roll, like this is back when he was training with us. He would get me with it. I cannot make it work for me. And anyway, we rolled and he got me with it again, and I was like, your favorite sweep? He goes, yep. Like he knew straight away, like we had this joke, and like he was like, you taught it to me, and I was like, it's the best sweep I can teach and can't do.
It's a thing.
Cannot execute.
Definitely. Okay, and I was having a similar conversation with or something appropriate for this end of the talk anyway, is with Brett the other night on the mats. And he goes, we're talking to him, and I go, oh, sweet roll. Because we've got this thing going at the moment. We both come from histories where it's been blood and guts sort of style training. And it's taken a couple of rolls to get through. But I'm at the stage now where I like to be real fucking playful and just like real tight, don't give anything away, and just see where the roll goes. And he's expecting the other. And so kind of, for a couple of rolls there, he's kind of like, I don't.
It's almost like, can I trust this?
Should I snap this on or not, or what? And then he comes to me, he stops me the other day, and he goes, bro, you do something different to me every time. I go, yeah, I do. And he goes, like, what's all that about? Where's that come from? Like, what are you good at? I was like, nothing. I'm good at nothing. And I said to him, listen, most people hit blue belt, they work out a couple of things they like, and they dig right down into them. I hit blue belt, and I still couldn't fucking hyper-focus on nothing because my ADHD wasn't treated. And so I learned about everything and play a little bit of everything all the time on any given day of the week. Now that I'm not, burdened down with not being able to fucking focus on something properly, I actually can play most of those parts with a reasonable level of skill. I'm just not exceptional at any one part of a game. So I said, I'll be able to probably handle most situations. I just can't do it at a world-class level, and that was the difference for me is, I came up too, I guess, fixated on whatever anything else was going on and just reaching for the shiny toy instead of sticking to a systematic place. So, it's definitely got me to a place where I have a good rounded knowledge. What it doesn't do is create a guy who's really good at getting the job done. It's not built for it's not built for competition. You can't fight a competition or you can't train for a competition by doing that. You got to be very specific, very focused, streamlined, and things like that. So, but we find there. And then two old dudes bump into each other on the mats and have a sick time rolling. So it's all good. But for our girls, my hope would be that, they, I guess, obviously stick to it would be the first one. But, take away from it all the things that I get to take away from it long term. That's what I would want for them. That's what I would hope for them. Is that all the things that it's done for me that it also does for them and more.
I think with jiu-jitsu and kids, when they've come up through it with their parents and things like that, number one, it's comfortable. It's kind of habit at that point.
Very much so.
It's also something they're used to. They'll always have it in their back pocket.
Yep.
It's not really something... It's a perishable skill, but you're not going to lose it that much that if you really needed it, you wouldn't be able to pull it back out and use it against an untrained person, for example, in a self-defense kind of situation. They make such a strong community around them, and a lot of their friends train and things like that. So it kind of like, you could say, they'll dip in and out, or they'll find other interests, but it will probably always be that sense of home as well.
And I think too, we did martial arts even through our 20s. I would say it's ingrained in us, and we've handed that over in the generation as well. So I think the 3 Ps will always find, no matter where they are, what they're doing, they'll find a way to put jiu-jitsu into their life somehow.
And if it dips out at some point, it dips out. Yeah. But the chances are at some point they're going to have kids.
Yeah.
And they'll go, oh, you know what I used to do? It was really good for me and it gave me all this. So we'll put the kids in.
Yeah.
And then that may get them back on the mats and that sort, or at least back into the community, so.
And they've got to do it until they're 18. So it's going to be well and truly
I
entrenched.
don't think you're getting many arguments over that.
No, luckily. And touch wood on that regard, we talk about it all the time that but again, the kids have been conditioned not to argue about it. Because it's like telling your kid they're going to school. You start them or brushing their teeth. That's right. Kids know that they've got to go to school through kindy, through primary, and then year 7 through year 12. Overseas, it's whatever the case may be, but they're conditioned to understand that that's what's going to happen. We did exactly the same with jiu-jitsu. You are on the mats. This is not open for negotiation. It's not open for discussion. You're on the mats. So, bury in. Yep. Huckle up.
Well, and we've got and I don't know, people will have varying opinions on it too, but I mean, every opportunity we see something in the news where a young lady's been attacked or something like that, we bring it to their knowledge, this is why. Yeah. This
attacked
is why.
Or killed.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's another big thing, a big bugbear, we've both got at the moment is just the amount of just entitled fuckwit men just going out there and just destroying beautiful things because they didn't get what they wanted, or they couldn't get their own way, or they just didn't see that there was other ways to deal with it. It's like, that's just terrifying.
Yep.
Terrifying that my daughters are going to have to go out and potentially submit to that sort of situation. Now they maybe have some better options.
Yep. 100%.
There's a fighting chance at least, right?
100%.
And, look, we talk about mental health being depression and anxiety and things like that. And mental health doesn't always trigger due to traumatic experiences or anything. For whatever reason, Willow had anxiety as a very young child. And there wasn't, she's been raised in this world where we've had a lot that we've had to endure, and whether or not as a very young child that's had a negative impact to her, I would largely say yes.
Yep.
But I think jiu-jitsu has been a massive part of her ability to grow through that anxiety. And that's not to say that she's fully cured of anxiety. That still exists. But what jiu-jitsu has given her is coping mechanisms, strength to understand it. And we're such an open book, and we're very much an open family, so we talk a lot about these kind of things as well. So there's no shame in our family about having anxiety. There's no embarrassment about having, tisms or anything like that. And I think we've been very fortunate to watch what, for our 15-year-old daughter, what the mental health journey has been for her in relation to jiu-jitsu giving her strength and capability and coping mechanisms to work through those kind of things as well. So there are many aspects, not just for Matt, but for our kids as well. And for me, when I came off the mats to have the surgery, I was shocking. I was locked away in a room and caged up and did not cope well at all. So there are so many attributes where being on the mat, being a part of the community, it just filters oxygen through you.
I love seeing your growth, Kaz, in this space, in your understanding that this is now for you.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's hugely
and
important.
really important for your mental health just as much as it is for your
Yeah,
family.
yeah. And, we're 9 years, 10 years into the journey of jiu-jitsu, and it's really only been in the last 18 months that I've been able to identify, okay, if this was taken away from me tomorrow, that is now detrimental to me.
Yep.
And that's huge. That's a huge thing to come, I guess, to the forefront for me as well. It's important to me, for me now. Yep, ownership is a big part of the process too. Yep. And that's why we say it all the time. If you are the person struggling, you have to also be the person willing to work. You cannot struggle and expect someone else to save you. That's not how this shit works. People can support you. People can absolutely be there to lend a hand and help you if you allow them in. And the only way you're going to allow them in is by first accepting, taking ownership of it, and being willing to do the work with the people who are supporting you. And that could be your gym buddies, it could be your psychologist, it could be whatever it is. But to get through this and to get to the other side, you have to first own it. And
Would that be your hope?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, that's my hope.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say I thank you for owning it, because we have a pretty awesome family and we nearly didn't.
Yeah. But everybody's got to be out for the win.
Yeah.
So we were all there for the win.
We did. So yes, to wrap it up, thank you for joining us today, being a face.
What about Rach's hope?
No, I'm getting there.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Oh, you've got to do your hope too.
I just did. You said, what do we hope for the girls? And I said, that's what I would hope for the girls.
Okay.
And then,
well, I didn't mean that as your general hope.
But
Anyway.
you said the word hope.
Okay, well, I just meant what do you want for the girls?
Sorry, I didn't know. I didn't understand the question.
Sorry, I didn't mean to play footsies with you under the table then
Sorry,
too.
I kind of liked it.
Just lean into it. Whatever it is, lean into it.
I always like
turning
when we
into a
get
different
the
podcast.
husbands on because we get to play.
Yeah.
Let's get weird, ladies.
Okay, so yes, very much my hope. If you're out there and you are suffering, on the mental health train at all, please champion yourself. That's my hope. Want it better for you first and foremost. Be selfish.
Yeah.
What's your hope?
Man, never give up.
Yep.
Never, ever give up. I had a friend who ended it many years ago. And I just think about all she's missed out on.
Yep.
Since then, what her life could have been like. It doesn't ever stay down forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It always comes back up.
Yep.
There's always hope. There's always a reason. If you can't find the reason, look for it. If you can't look for it, get out there and just do something. Make your bed.
Yep.
Get out, go for a walk. Find a community. Find someone who loves you.
It's a storm, right? The storms pass.
It's absolutely. And I know that, you know, what we know about psychology and what we know about people that do opt for that, it's not that they want to end it. It's just that they just don't want to be in pain anymore.
They want the noise to stop.
Yeah.
And there are other ways to stop the noise.
There's so many other ways. It's devastating.
Yep.
The alternatives. So,
It is.
Yeah.
And it's devastating for everyone left behind. That's the thing. Like, yes, I understand that person has stopped the pain, the noise, the treachery that goes with it.
But it hasn't stopped it. It's just passed it on
That's
to
it.
everybody
Yeah.
else.
You don't just kill yourself. You actually take lives of the people around you who
That's right.
are responsible for you, and
Left
you're
behind.
responsible too. So yeah,
Yeah.
hang in
And
there
that's
for
the
them
big
if
thing.
nothing else.
Yeah, and that's it. And do the work on the good days, guys. It's so much easier if you do the work on the good days.
And it carries forward, doesn't it?
It really
When you
does.
do the work on the good days, as like you were saying before with the rolling effect of medication and activity and things like that, it gets into your system.
Yep.
It lasts you for a couple of days. You've got to go back and do it again
right.
and again and again. You can't just go, I'm going to go to jiu-jitsu once this month
Yeah.
and have that be
And then
the...
be good.
No, you've got to turn up.
Yeah.
Yep.
And whatever your dosage
Yeah.
is, you
Yeah.
know, it could be 3 times a week. It could be friggin' every single day,
Yep.
you know.
And if that's what it's going to take,
that's what it takes, do it.
do that.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Do that well and truly.
What's your hope, Matt?
My hope would be, I guess, for people out there, if you're struggling with where you sit in the world, if you're struggling with, I guess, how you feel about yourself, your circumstance, situation, to Rachel's point, to Kaz's point, there's always somebody there who can walk with you. There's always an opportunity there for somebody who understands. There's always an opportunity for it to get better tomorrow. So choose tomorrow. Find your next mission. That's the secret, right? For me, was finding the next mission. It didn't matter what it looked like. And even on a daily, some days it's just about finding the next mission. If you can find that and then orientate towards that, achieve that, succeed, execute, to the best of your abilities, reorientate, find the next mission, and just stack that up, because after you do that a couple of times, you can look back and you've stacked some pretty credible results. And whether it's jiu-jitsu, whether it's just, finding a job and working at that, or being a parent, that's the secret. What's the next mission?
Very
So
nice.
good.
Hey, thanks for joining us on this side of the camera.
It's my pleasure. I look forward to seeing you again in post-production.
For hours.
Do you get sick of our voices?
Oh, so much.
I can imagine you would. I can't imagine that. That's why you don't turn up to any of my classes anymore,
That's right.
Matt.
No.
I can't listen to that voice.
If I hear it again, if I hear it again, I'll just lose
Damn
it.
it.
No.
That's a
I
side
reckon-
effect I didn't want to have happen.
I reckon half the time he's got those headphones on with nothing on, just so he doesn't have to listen to my voice. I'm pretty sure he sits at the computer with the headphones on.
No, look, I'd say
Ching,
that
ching,
the
ching.
only parts that really get to the point where you go back into being like, I might just burn the whole world down, is like if you've got a 3-second gap and you've just got to find the right spot to cut at, and you have to listen to it, and then somebody makes a noise in the background, and then a kid comes and asks you about it, and you've listened to this same 3-second track at least 47 times, you realise that audio engineering in that micro sort of situation is for some particular button-down psychopath that I'm not yet. That's what it comes down to.
It frightens me that you said not yet.
Hey, look,
We'll send him over the edge.
we're just untapped potential. That's all we are. No, but it's a pretty easy job. I got no complaints there. It's not awful.
Well, thank you
Enjoy
for
it.
being on the podcast with us today. Thank you for being producer Matt every single week. This podcast literally would not exist without you. You are
Likewise
a
with
very
you guys
important part
too.
of the team. I can't imagine that Kaz or I would have the patience nor the
Hell no.
qualifications nor the inclination to do what you do. So
No, ma'am. Did
just
enough
gotta-
of that in my
yeah.
previous world. Know that
That's
I
it.
do not want to go back there again.
I just have to be Cortez about it. I have to land my ships, and then I have to get all the people off, and then I need to push the ships out of the harbour and burn them. So I've got no opportunity but to succeed.
I don't know what any of that meant, but I like it.
Just nod and smile.
Smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave. All right. Well, as usual, if you liked what you heard today,
Yeah,
please
you do it this week.
Yeah, I know. That was like, bom, bom.
Yeah, that was
Please
mass fail.
Actually, you know who should do it?
Matthew.
He's so very good at it. Can you
I know,
please do
yeah,
our
do it.
sign off
Okay.
today? Go for it.
Okay. As always, if you'd like what you heard, please like, share, subscribe, because what it does for us is get us into the earboxes of other terribly awful grapplers who might just take some resolution from this very place to say that maybe I won't be as much of a fuck up tomorrow.
God help us. This is why you're only allowed on very rarely.
Beautiful. I know. I thought that was perfect. We might soundbite that and just put that on the end of everything.
on the end of everyone. And I was going to say you have a beautiful voice for radio.
You do.
It's better than my face for radio.
I didn't say that.
You know, my ugly
Can you
small
have a
face.
face for radio?
Yeah, I don't know, but you can have a face for podcasts. Righto. Thanks,
All
honey.
right.
I love you.
Till next week.
Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Roll to your shit.
Roll to your shit. You dickhead.
This podcast is a My Broken Soldier production.
And brought to you by Iconic Jiu-Jitsu.